helped bridge science and spirituality for me and helped me understand the real matrix. The subconscious is emotions. So you have to impress that with emotions to actually make it a memory. And when that happens, you are actually changing your neurology, your biochemistry, your DNA.
The most difficult part is like, how do you authentically generate this emotionality of a feeling that you've never actually had?
If I can't crack through, I will visualize people that I love dead. Your reality shrinks or expands to your level of belief. That's the crazy part about life, is we're not all living in the same universe. We're living in 8 billion different universes. That's called reality distortion. And that is the character trait of every remarkable founder. And this idea of the future, to where the future I've created in my mind is more real than the future I can perceive with my 5 senses.
We watched this old internet video, My New Haircut. I haven't watched, seen, or thought about that thing in 20 years. Literally the next morning, my buddy texts me out of the blue, like, oh, look at this video of that video. I'm like, what are the odds?
And I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit here. I'm not getting up every fucking day until I feel abundant, until I feel like a millionaire.
You need to be sensitive in this business.
Yeah.
Right? It's the human business.
I used to think sensitivity was a huge weakness. Ultimately, if you're saying, what's the one differentiator that you have? It's my compassion.
Dude, so good to have you here.
I'm happy to be here, man.
Yeah. So let's talk about one of my favorite topics to start, which is freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to guess that you're probably a freedom maximalist as well, based on the things I know about you.
That would be correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
You break down freedom into financial, time, location, and inner freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just unpack those for me? And how have each one of those shown up in your life?
I think in general, we tend to get freedom wrong. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of, personally worked with and befriended a lot of very successful billionaires that aren't happy, right? And we've all heard the trivial stories. The most accomplished people in the world that have everything they want, there's still something missing, right? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of us are fed this idea, this narrative that we want the traditional American dream, the quintessential idea of what freedom looks like, where you got your own house, you've got a career or a company that you like, you can work from wherever you want, you can do whatever you want, but then you're still imprisoned within yourself, right? You're still not actually in control of your destiny. Your quality of life is still at the mercy of your uncontrolled emotions. And so when I think about freedom, I think there's 4 components to it. So one is obvious, it's the financial freedom. It's like, do you have enough resources to fuel the type of life that you want? Then you have time freedom. Like, are you able to spend your time units in areas that you are passionate, excited about, and ideally do few to none of the things that you actually don't want to do? Do you actually have agency over your time, or do you have to show up for work in an office at 9 a.m. and you can't do your thing? Then you have location freedom. A lot of people, they want to go travel, they want to experience life, they want to be able to be where they want to be when they want to be there. And that's really liberating too, right? You don't want to be stuck in a cubicle your whole entire life, clocking and clocking out. And then you have inner freedom, which is, I think, the thing that we're all really driving towards. All of us would happily work in cubicles and work a 9 to 5 if we had inner freedom. And I would personally much rather take inner freedom than everything else combined, because ultimately the quality of our emotions and how we feel within ourselves dictates our experience of life. And if there's 100 billionaires in a room, who's the alpha? It's the billionaire that every other billionaire wants to be. It's the Richard Bransons. It's people that have figured out how to live a life that truly fulfills them. It's people that feel free within themselves. I know so many successful people that cannot go approach a girl. They're horrified. Yeah. So they're like, you know what? Let me make another billion, so maybe she'll see me and approach me. Right? Or I really want to learn how to dance. I really want to go dance, but like, I'm so insecure about my dancing. I'm just going to go make another $1 billion so I can be on a higher pedestal so the world can see me. Everything is just this overcompensation to feel a particular way about ourselves. And so if we keep accumulating all these accolades and these status symbols, relationships outside of us to insulate us so we feel good about ourselves, ultimately, we're always prisoners of third-party conditions. And so once we realize that the whole thing of wealth is inner wealth. And actually, the more you build inner wealth, true self-love, true self-acceptance, the faster outer wealth actually finds you.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's what's the point of everything? You want an emotion. You want to feel abundant. You want to feel loved. You want to feel secure. You want to feel whole.
Yeah.
And that for me has been the focus of my life, especially in the last 3 to 4 years after I accomplished a lot of my goals. I had the I had the financial freedom, the time freedom, location freedom. I can run my company, do whatever I want. I can be in any country at any given moment on a drop of a hat. But I kept traveling and racking up all these awesome experiences and Instagram pictures, and I had the same fucking problems internally. It was always the same stories, the same limitations, the same insecurities that followed me everywhere. And I realized, okay, this is a deeply, purely inner game, and I'm going to actually go within, face off with myself, figure out what is preventing me from just allowing myself, to love life, and to experience the world in a way where I actually feel free within who I am. And I can just enjoy the magic that's already in front of me without having to chase some future that inevitably I always get to, and then forget that that was my initial dream, only to cast the next dream and live in a state of insecurity and lack and continue to chase that. So for me, inner freedom is what we all want.
Yeah. No, it's so well said. The inner freedom then, is this what, and it sounds like that's kind of what you were saying, is that it gets us off of the hedonic treadmill. When you actually go within and you decide, what is the experience of life that you wish to have, and what is preventing you from having it? Often it is unconscious patterns, I think, or blind spots, which we can often only see in the mirror of relationship. Often it's the shadow, maybe these are all different words for the same type of thing. And it occurs to me too, that people, it seems like the conventional wisdom is that there is a tension between financial freedom and time and location freedom, right? Like people are trading away their time and location freedom to go and clock in 9 to 5 to pursue financial freedom as if it will give them inner freedom. But that sequence doesn't typically work. Like, not to say that there's not something to it. Like, you do need to have some level of financial freedom before you can pursue the inner freedom, right? You can't, especially if you don't have any money to start out, right?
Yeah.
Well, it costs money to pursue the inner freedom and do the work. I don't know. Could you just talk a little bit about that arrangement? And then what has been I know you're big into Joe Dispenza. I wonder what else has been on your path towards inner freedom?
It's a great question. Yeah, I think we're constantly going through seasons in life and we toggle between these. I traded the first 7 years of my time freedom and location freedom to make money. Because when you're in survival and you're trying to work up a nest egg, you're not thinking, okay, I need anything else. You're in survival mode. Self-actualization is a luxury. Yeah. And so inside of that context, I was just grinding as hard as I could to get to a point where I had the resources where I could actually do something with it. Now, fast forward, I built a company. I have all that. At that point, the toggle there is you're typically trading your inner wealth for outer wealth. And that's the treadmill that most people, I think, get stuck on forever. They never graduate from the game.
Right.
This
is where the billionaires get stuck at the top.
This is where the billionaires get stuck.
Yeah.
And even, people much less successful, it's very easy for us to get trapped in this. And so you're always toggling between those. And I think everyone's on their own spiritual path, and you have your awakening. Maybe you do, maybe you never do. But it happens at different points in time. And so for me, I think I had enough successes where I kept being foolish and thinking that thing was going to give me what I wanted. Like, you'd think you would learn after 1 or 2 times. I probably had a couple hundred different little accolades along the way where I'm like, shit, I'm a slow learner here. Yeah. Like, there's something inside me. And so for me, the couple things that I think really blasted me off into my journey of consciousness and made me aware of this was the Landmark Forum, which is like a weekend-long seminar. That helped me distinguish stories from events. I wasn't aware that I had memories from childhood that I created stories around in a state of intense emotion that then became my subjective truth that was preventing me from being who I wanted to be, because there's your conscious and your subconscious mind, right? Yes. Your subconscious mind is 95% of who you are. Only 5% is conscious. So we're just a walking robot of automated programs, right? And so I had a desire to be a CEO, to be a leader, to build nonprofits, to build companies, to change the world. But I was stuck inside of a 11-year-old kid's story who lost a baseball game to go to the World Series, that thought, if you ever put me in charge to lead people ever again, I will let them down because of that single moment when I lost that game. And so I sabotaged subconsciously all of my efforts to be a leader, to step up, because I was so afraid of letting people down. So I overcompensated with performance, and I had to be the best, which is not a great trait of a leader. A leader is supposed to show a leader isn't supposed to show you how awesome they are. They should show you how awesome you are, right, and empower people. Right. I uncovered that in the Landmark Forum. And then later in life, in addition to just reading a ton of great books. Joe Dispenza has been a pretty massive influence in my life, who helped bridge science and spirituality for me and helped me understand the real matrix, right? The real matrix is in our own minds. If you can free yourself from your own mind, then you can really do anything.
Yes.
It's all based on your perception of the world, because your perception is your reality. So if you can change your thoughts, you can change your beliefs, which are just thoughts repeated.
Yeah.
And you can change your emotional home, your emotional states you create from, which unconsciously dictate all of your actions, which dictate your results, which dictate your destiny. And so if you can start to become more conscious and go inward, which I did thousands of hours of meditation and started to rehearse the future I wanted, because I realized that the imagination is the most powerful technology in the world. It's more powerful than AI.
Well said.
Who created AI? Our imaginations.
Yeah.
But what happens is we leave our imaginations unguarded and we do not direct that power intelligently. We ruminate on the past that we cannot control and kick ourselves. We project into the future and imagine terrible scenarios and actually physically live them, because your brain cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined event and a real event. And so we're forecasting and literally living memories physiologically that have never happened. And we're projecting and propelling our bodies and our minds into those unwanted futures just by rehearsing them. And so once I realized that, I'm like, let me take a step back. Let me take control of this power. Let me actually start envisioning and rehearsing who I want to be. How does that guy act? What life does he live? And then beyond the conscious element of it, how can I actually start to teach my body how to feel like it's real? Because you only manifest what you feel comfortable having. It has to feel natural. And that's why when you eventually manifest something, meaning you have an idea and it comes into life, it doesn't feel that surprising because you've already rehearsed it so many times, it's normal.
Wow.
Right? So I started rehearsing my future and who I wanted to be over and over. And every morning I would write down old me, new me. What's one thing about the old me that I'm leaving behind that has not helped me create the future I want? What is one belief, thought, action that the new me is taking today to project myself into a new reality, into this future that I want? And I would journal, I would meditate, I'd rehearse, and I got obsessed with that time of solitude to create my life from the inside out.
Wow. Amazing. Is it the rehearsal component then? Is that the actual journaling? Or when you say rehearsal, I'm envisioning like an actual, you're acting out what you want to become. Like how does that, is this a Joe Dispenza practice? Like how does that actually work?
Yeah, it's a mental rehearsal, right? And then there's emotional rehearsal. So I'll get a little quantum physicsy, but I'll make it very practical, because I think if you understand this information, it's impossible to go back to your old life. You'll never live your life the same. So at a base level, we're all energy. Subatomically, you, me, this table right here, we're all made up of the same particles.
E equals MC squared.
It's all energy, right? But we're confined by our five senses. We can only perceive things with our senses, and our senses can experience 0.0001% of reality. And that's generous, right? So we cannot perceive this world of energy, but there's an operating system we're all confined to, right? We cannot escape it. So the question is, how do we understand it? How do we cooperate with it? And our world works in an electromagnetic field. That's the universe. It's electromagnetic, this invisible field of energy. Electro is thought, magnetic is emotion. So when we think a thought, we're sending an electrical impulse into the field. And then when we feel an emotion, we're drawing that experience to us. Wow. And so when you can sync the heart and the mind, brain-heart coherence, you become a vortex of manifestation and creation. And it can be bad or good things, by the way, right? The universe is unbiased.
Yeah.
It's only giving you who you are. It's the law of resonance. The universe is always reflecting back to you an exact mirror image of who you are. So if you don't like your results, it's you. Wow. Always.
Yeah.
Always. And it's because you're planting and designing things unconsciously that you're manifesting. And so by understanding that electromagnetic field, thoughts, emotions, you essentially, all you have to do, you don't have to create anything. People are like, I got to go build this company. I got to do all these things. You don't. All you have to do is design it and then align to it. And you'll be naturally swept into aligned actions with no resistance. It'll feel regular. It'll feel great. And things will start falling into your place and into your reality like you wouldn't believe. And it's this beautiful, dynamic, harmonious flow between you and the universe. Wow. And life is just really conspiring to take all your ideas and put them into reality. And the shorter the distance there is between you and what you want, the faster it appears. So if I want $1 million, but I feel like money is evil and I'll never be rich and, you know, I'm stupid, I'm so vibrationally separate from that thing. It's going to take me hundreds of years potentially if I even ever get there, because there's so much separation between me and that which I want. So this process is about sitting down and rehearsing, visualizing. What does that ideal life look like? What do you look like? How does it feel? Right? You're just envisioning the future. You're envisioning yourself speaking to a crowd of 10,000 people and they're going crazy. You're envisioning holding your first son, smiling at your wife and saying, I love you. This is the best moment of my life. You're envisioning being on the boat with your friends, doing a cheers to your new boat and saying, hey, I did this for us guys. Now we can experience these amazing memories together. You're getting vivid visuals of this dream life you want, suspending all belief. And then this is the key part. Most people keep it cognitive, and that's why it doesn't work. Right. That's why affirmations in and of themselves are ineffective. Right. It's purely cognitive. It's not moving past your executive center in your brain into your subconscious, into your emotional brain. The subconscious is emotions. So you have to impress that with emotions to actually make it a memory. And so when I can sit there and I can feel it, and I can feel I'm so lost in the act of envisioning this future that I can feel it as if it happens. And when that happens, you are actually changing your neurology, your biochemistry, your DNA. You're infiltrating your entire system and you're rewiring yourself to look like the event already happened. And it's the exact same as experiencing it in reality. Wow. Right. And so that I realized was so powerful. And I'm like, if my thoughts and my emotions create my destiny, I've got to take control of those and direct them. But that's the beauty. That's the real magic, is in imagining it, teaching yourself how to feel it and feeling that gratitude. Because then you wake up from that and you feel like you won the lottery. You feel like you feel whole, you feel complete. There's no lack and there's no vibrational separation between you and what you want. So by connecting to the emotion of the end state you desire, you actually pull it towards you.
That sounds amazing. Yeah. I feel like it's the most difficult part. Well, for me personally, I feel like that is the most difficult part. Is like, how do you authentically generate this emotionality of a feeling that you've never actually had? And then there's that, but then there's also, like, as a hyper rational male, I feel difficult. It's easy for me to generate thoughts, much more difficult for me to try to generate an emotion, right? It took me years to even get in touch with my emotions. They were absolutely early 20s. I didn't even think I had them for a while. You know, it's like, other than anger, but so, like, what is because it's mostly men that listen to the show, and obviously I'm selfishly asking you too, but, like, what is there a trick to training the emotionality aspect to that practice? Because this seems sort of easy, but this one seems much more difficult.
I've grappled with this my whole life. And as a hyper intellectual male as well, I've just started connecting to my heart a few years ago. But I'll say this, I overlooked the heart for the longest time, and I realized it's the most important thing. Your mind is powerful. I'm a big mindset guy. It's got me to where I am in life. But when I just look at the science, and again, I like some of the spiritual woo stuff, and I can really engage in some rabbit hole conversations, but I'm a scientist. I want to understand data. I told you that everything is electromagnetic. The heart has a 100 times stronger electrical current than the brain, a 5,000 times more powerful magnetic force than the brain. So when it comes to attracting things into your life, the intelligence of your heart is the most superior thing in your body. Right. And so given that, I've played around with this. I like to experiment and try things, because I'll sit down for hours sometimes and I can't feel anything. And I'm like, feel it, motherfucker. Like, what the hell? And so for me, gratitude is the easiest anchor for me. Like, I will just think of memories. I've even written them down that I can plug into and revisualize of the moments I felt the most grateful in my life, the moments that I fell in love, the moments that I was acknowledged by somebody who meant a lot to me, the moments I'm smiling with people I love. Really profound moments, I'll anchor those in. And sometimes I get a little bit morbid with it. And I'm like, if I can't crack through, I will visualize people that I love dead. Because I want to feel the absence and, oh my God, like, I want to feel how much I love this person. And then I remind myself that they're still in my life, and I just feel so grateful. Right. So I'll play around with my mind and do whatever I have to do to feel, because I realize that feeling is the superpower. We demonize feelings a lot. Hey, you got to be logical and all that. But I believe in life, you're supposed to lead with your heart and then recruit your mind to serve your heart.
Yes.
And a lot of us are just creating from our minds.
Yeah.
And then we're trying to convince our hearts to get excited. Come on, man. I really want to be the CEO of this company. Your heart's like, that's actually not in alignment with your path, but I'm not going to follow you there. And then you're just muscling through life, right? But you never are in alignment. You're never leading from your heart, from true inspiration and passion. You're actually creating from a void of needing to be something so that you can feel safe, so that you can feel respected, you can feel loved, and you just leave your heart behind. And then if that's true, you never access your full power.
That's beautiful. It's a beautiful practice. It reminded me of negative visualization that the Stoics do, where it's like, whether you take a sip of water or you hug your mother, you just imagine that that is the last time you'll ever do that action. And then it gives you can give you this sense of gratitude, right? For whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
But using the mind to imagine the death of loved ones, that's intense, but obviously very effective.
Yeah.
Right? Because then you're like, oh, wait, they're still alive. Yes.
We take things for granted, man.
Yeah.
And gratitude is the most important, in my opinion, the most important emotion. It's the gateway to every other positive emotion.
I've heard it's the frequency of the universe.
Yes.
And so somehow that makes sense.
Gratitude is a signature of receivership.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling grateful, the idea is that you receive something.
Yeah.
So if you can teach yourself to feel grateful in advance of things actually happening, you collapse time
to receive.
so the universe can match your frequency. Right. And it sounds like woo-woo shit, but it's so scientific that once I got into the science of it, I'm like, okay, I'm an idiot to dispel this. And so gratitude is the key, but I'll sit there. I was sitting there. I dreamed of living in this beautiful mansion on the water for the longest time. I'm sitting there and, looking out at the ocean, feeling nothing. Yeah. Feeling empty, man. And at that point in time, it was a really funny stark contrast where I'm like, God, this is hilarious. I was living in a freaking slum in Kenya and I was on cloud 9. I was so happy. I had so much love and joy flowing through my veins. And now I'm sitting here in the house that I dreamed of in that particular moment. And I just felt nothing. And I'm like, this is just a comical inner game. Yeah. None of this shit matters. So it's like, for me, it takes time to remind myself of that stuff. I have to take inventory and I have to force myself, especially as a high achiever that's never looking back and always looking to the future, always seeing what could be built next, to actually give myself some positive reinforcement by looking back 5 years, looking back to different points in my life and just taking inventory of that massive leap and bound. I think we can all just dramatically benefit from that. At any given moment, our level of happiness, I think, and joy and satisfaction with ourselves is determined by, are you focusing on the absence or presence of something in your life? We focus so much on what's absent. We focus so little on what's present. And they're both always there. And so for me, I've had to make a very conscious effort to count my blessings, to take inventory. And if I don't do that, if I don't journal, if I don't make that conscious, if I feel like I'm not even winning.
Wow.
I feel like there's just an infinite amount of things that I need to be that I'm not yet. And I forget how far I've come. And it's trivial, it's trite, but sometimes simple practices make the biggest difference.
For sure.
It's not complex. We don't have to go down a quantum physics rabbit hole to figure out how to change our lives in a positive way.
Yeah. And it's consistent with so much, of wisdom tradition and whatnot. Robert Grant summarized it nicely on the show. He said, when you learn to feel with the mind and think with the heart, the river of wisdom flows. And it's just heart-mind resonance.
Yes.
But there is sort of a master emissary dynamic going on. They're not 50-50, which is weird, right? It's like the heart, it needs to be the master organ and the mind needs to be the servant to the heart's aim. But it's difficult, I think, especially as men, right? I've also thought that the heart's more of a feminine organ in terms of it being more of a receptive. When I say feminine, like not woman necessarily, but in terms of the principle of receptiveness versus masculine being the principle of assertiveness, let's say. And the mind is really good at doing all that stuff, planning and going different directions, but you need to be, this is very low bandwidth relative to the heart. Yeah. Right? The heart can sense and be receptive and open to a lot more things. So it does sound woo-woo, but it is so important. iCoin Technology has released a slick new hardware wallet. It looks like a mini iPhone with a high-res 3-inch touchscreen and camera on it. The device has no Wi-Fi, no cellular connection, and no GPS. It is an air-gapped hardware wallet which uses QR codes and a camera to communicate with the Bitcoin network. It has a built-in camera which is required for air-gap operation, and it has an optional Bluetooth compatibility. It's really a brand new user interface and user experience for a Bitcoin hardware wallet. iCoin makes self-custody accessible, easy to use, and non-intimidating. It even comes with an optional custom iCoin thermal printer, so you can print out the private key and its associated QR code when you're setting up the wallet. This makes setup quick and simple. Also, it is easy to restore the wallet just by reading the seed phrase QR code with the wallet camera. And as we always talk about on this show, the only way you can truly own your Bitcoin is by having it in self-custody. So you need a device like the iCoin wallet to truly own your Bitcoin. So go to iCointechnology.com/breedlove today for 30% off the purchase of this sleek new hardware wallet. Again, that's iCointechnology.com/breedlove. In times of chaos, clarity can be currency. Right now, supply chains are fragile and cash flow has never been more volatile. If your business can't adapt in real time, then you're exposed. That's where NetSuite by Oracle comes in. It's the #1 cloud ERP, trusted by over 41,000 businesses for a reason. It gives you total visibility, from global shipments to real-time cash flow to the true cost of what's stuck. NetSuite consolidates accounting, finance, inventory, and human resources into one unified platform, one source of truth. With AI baked in, routine tasks get automated away so that your team can stay focused on high-leverage activities. If I were scaling a business right now, NetSuite is the system I would use. One system, full control. With NetSuite, you can tame chaos. If you're running a business doing 7 figures or more in revenue, grab their free ebook, Navigating Global Trade, 3 Insights for Leaders, at netsuite.com/whatismoney. Again, that's netsuite.com/whatismoney. I want to talk about, could you talk about desire too, distinguishing between mimetic desire versus authentic desire? I assume you mean desire coming from the heart. I mean, I guess desire can also come from the mind, but so how do you, what's the difference between these two? And how do we know when we are thinking with the heart and feeling with the mind?
Mimetic desire comes from the ego, and authentic desire comes from the spirit.
Okay.
One of them looks really good to others, and one of them feels really good to you. And it can be difficult to distinguish those, because sometimes we can do mimetic things that feel good because we're getting validation, but they're not actually pure intent. So when I think about this, look, what we pursue in life ultimately dictates our lives, and the paradigms of how we just define success. Choosing to work on the right thing is more important than going fast and achieving it, because who wants to climb the wrong mountain? So getting in touch with your true desires is an iterative experimental process. And we learn over time, oh, I tried this, it sucked. Well, I don't want to be an accountant, right? Whatever it may be.
I did learn that, actually. That was one of my paths.
You learned that. And so mimetic desire is you're just desiring things because other people like them. Other people assign value to certain things, which make you value them.
And you're just imitating.
Right. You're imitating. Like, oh, people like nice houses, so I'm going to get a nice house. Oh, people, girls respond well to Lamborghinis. I'm going to get a Lamborghini. Yeah. Oh, these guys have nice watches. I'm going to get a nice watch. Oh, this particular profession is more exalted in society's eyes. Well, I'm going to go pursue that because I want love. So the funny thing is, it's all driven by ego and insecurity and lack. And so you can always just discover, like, what void inside of me is propelling me to pursue this, right? Yeah. What voided me? And you can tell, because when you're doing mimetic desire, you're literally just looking like everyone else. You can just observe the patterns of the majority. And if you're operating as the majority, you're not authentic, right? You tend to just, it works in politics and business. You're never fully aligned to any one party, any one idea. So you have to have sovereign thinking and start to say, who am I? What actually lights me up in life? What makes my soul feel happy? Who do I feel my best around? What gives me energy? Those are the types of questions to ask to figure out your authentic desires, what truly lights your spirit up. That's your true self, right? Versus the other questions like, what's going to make me look best in front of society? What's going to give me the most status and respect? How can I make the most money? Those questions, they're going to lead you down to mimetic desires, right? And there's the Diderot effect too, which is when you get one nice thing, you've upgraded your baseline, you want to match everything else in your life to that. So you get the house, then you want the car, then you want to upgrade your clothes and your wardrobe and then your watches, and you want to go to nicer restaurants now. Like everything has to match this new standard. And you fall into this unconscious cascading shithole where your whole life just becomes about upgrading everything outside of you, which ironically downgrades you, right? Because you just you're more successful as a character, right? So ultimately, I think true happiness, and what's more important than happiness, I believe, once you start getting into this, is peace, true peace, true self-acceptance, true wholeness. The beginning of that is when you kill your character and start to emerge as the unique being that you are. And that means you're going to start owning some of your quirky interests.
Right.
You're going to put yourself out there and not put yourself in this label box. You're not just the Bitcoin guy because the world wants you to be that. No, you're a philosopher, and you let that unveil. You let that passion, that curiosity develop, even if it's not the best for your brand and your following, right? Because it's who you are, and you're a multidimensional being, and you don't suffocate any one part of yourself to conform to an idea that you think will benefit you for the sake of society.
This is such a great point. So, because we are all stuck in the mimetic game to some extent, right? Like all of the cultural downloads we get, all of, it's largely from our parents, right? Obviously the people we grow up imitating first typically are our parents. So we live in that reality, but it's very hierarchical, social status driven, comparative by nature, obviously. And that can blot out your authentic path. And it seems like there's something about maturity here as well, because when we're younger, there's such a concern about fitting in and, being popular and all this stuff. And like, there's still that concern as you get older, but somewhat paradoxically, it's like by trying to not caring so much about fitting in and being popular, you can find your unique thing. Right. Your unique confluence of whatever the things are. And then that is what will actually carry you into popularity or appreciation or hierarchical success, whatever it may be.
That's the paradigm shift, is when we're younger, all we want to do when we're very young, all we want to do is be ourselves. We want to play with our G.I. Joes or Barbies. We want to have fantasies. We want to hang out with friends and explore the forest and just create random ideas. And we think all of them are great. We just want to be ourselves. We have no self-suppression. As we get into our teenage years and beyond, our number one priority is conforming. We want to be like everyone else. We just want to fit in. We just want to belong. We just want to feel accepted. We just want to feel good enough, right? And we're willing to compromise ourselves. We are willing to transform ourselves for the relationships we want to be in, for the friends we want to be a part of, the circles we want to be in. We're willing to suffocate who we are because that desire for approval and belonging is so profound. It overrides everything. Now, eventually you go through that path, and once again, you learn from experience that it didn't give you the feelings you wanted.
Right.
And at that point, it's the unlearning of that character and the conscious creation of who you are. And for me, that's actually where your life begins, because it's the first time you're consciously creating yourself. And the process of consciously creating yourself is actually unlearning everything that's not you. So like Michelangelo with David, when he built the statue of David, he said, all I did was chip away at the marble until David revealed himself. Right. So he was just getting rid of all the negative programming, all the mimetic programming of who he needed to be to fit in with society. You just get rid of all that, and you and your authentic self emerges. And it takes courage. That's the key word. It takes courage. And courage, the etymology of that, core is heart in Latin, right? Courage is just to speak and act from the heart.
Wow, I didn't know that one.
And so that's going beyond your mind, because your mind will trick you into believing that you want certain things and you need to be certain things, but your heart always knows the truth. And in the process of creating yourself, for me, I used to go to all these events like raves and stuff with my friends when I was younger. I fucking hate house music and raves. I used to go drinking all the time with people that I didn't want to go drinking with because I didn't want to be lonely. I used to go watch certain movies and hang out at certain spots I didn't want to frequent because other people were there that I wanted to impress or be friends with. I would stay in relationships where my boundaries were overstepped and I wasn't being respected. I was willing to sacrifice what made me to keep certain people in my life and to appease others. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, this is who the fuck I am, right? And I no longer, if someone doesn't love me for me, I do not want any part of them in my reality. And that's the only thing in life I won't sacrifice. I will break myself to serve and help the people I love because it's real. But as you get older, I think you start understanding, hey, I like nice things, but I don't like all nice things. I have a really nice house because I like hosting and I love being in a high frequency environment, but I don't like cars. So I didn't have a car for 4 years. And I drive a golf cart now, which is kind of a shock when people are like, why are you, what's the deal here? I'm like, no, because I want to live my version of a rich life. And cars for me personally just don't get me excited. So I go spend $500,000 on a Rolls Royce when I'd rather put that into experiences with my friends or investments or nonprofits where they're actually going to have real stuff in the world. That's my personal thing. And then I splurge in other areas, and I get invited to things all the time that even 3 years ago, I would have said yes to all of them. Now I say no to 99% of them. Yeah. I don't go to bars. I don't go to clubs. I'm very intentional with what spaces I occupy, with who I connect with. And if people are upset by that, I don't give a shit. Yeah. Cause I'm like, I'm doing me, man. I'm doing me. And that takes time, I think, in life, but the quicker you can be honest with yourself and just keep it real. I used to lie. Even my best friend, I was telling her about a girl that a relationship ended. And I told her that I broke up with her. She dumped me. I was so insecure. I had to always look so good all the time. I couldn't even tell my best friend at the time, this is 8 years ago, that this girl broke up with me. Yeah. Because I had to always look good. So now I just take incredible amounts of pride in how flawed I am. Amazing. And how fucked up I am and how many mistakes I've made. But I just take pride in my humanity. And I feel like by doing so, I give other people permission to be their full selves. Yeah. And that to me is a such more gratifying feeling. And it's so much more powerful because I can admit it to you that I am a deeply flawed human being and I don't care. I'm just me.
Well, you're also closer to truth when you do that. Yes. Because we're all deeply flawed human beings. Deeply. And, it occurs to me too, again, it's courageous in the sense that the power of saying no to things that aren't consistent with what your heart actually wants after you've done the work. Because the other thing is, again, you probably do need to spend that time in solitude and meditation because the heart whispers and the mind screams and you need to get quiet to hear what the heart has to say. But once you've done that, in acting courageously and doing what you want, all of a sudden you're now bucking the mimetic game and going into your authentic desire game. But then again, in doing so, that's when you start to really hit a stride of success. And then you start to be imitated as a result, right? You're, as you said, giving people permission, but more like acting as a role model for people to similarly imitate and follow their own desires. And they say, you know what? I don't fucking like golf carts. I like jet skis. So I'm going to take a jet ski to work or whatever their thing is. Yeah. And so like and this is we talked about this offline. You asked me like, what's the mission of the show or something to that effect. And I was like, one of the things that's core is that we talk about the programmability of the human being and how it is the superpower. Like we're hyper adaptive. Right? Most organisms adapt to their niche or their environment, whereas we actually adapt our environments to become niches for us, right? This is the human superpower. And so if we take that seriously, then we will be very thoughtful about who we spend time with, what books we read, all those things, all the ingredients that make us us. And if we don't take that seriously, then we just typically get programmed by someone else. And so this seems like all of these things kind of tied together get you back to that inner freedom where we started at. Like you actually need to go inside and find it for yourself and then bring it. It reminds me of, I think it was Picasso, something like the meaning of life is to discover your gift and the purpose of life is to share it with the world. Yeah. It's like, okay, that's cool. Sounds like a Hallmark card or something, but there is a lot packed there. And people, you can actually do that. There is something unique inside of you because you are one of one. One of one. And I wish everyone in the world understood that. Yeah. There's two types of people, to make it oversimplified. People that are creating their lives and people that are living lives that are created for them by others. Yeah. And in one case, you have to ask yourself, are you happening to life or is life happening to you? Yeah. To what extent are you in control of what you're creating? And most people think, hey, the world is this way. Most of it's fixed. I have a little bit of agency on a few things in my control, but largely my destiny is not in my hands. And that person has given their agency away to an illusion. And they think it's true because, again, whatever you believe is true. Your reality is subjective. Your reality shrinks or expands to your level of belief. Wow. So if you believe that you are not worthy of something, if you believe that something's out of reach for you, if you believe you can't do something or that something doesn't exist, it doesn't.
And that's the crazy part about life is we're not all living in the same universe.
Yeah.
We're living in 8 billion different universes made up of our thoughts and belief systems that are creating these hologram projections that give us this illusion of what reality is, but all of it's an illusion. And so when you realize that, you can actually start manipulating energy and realize that it all comes from you, because life is just a giant hologram projection coming from a field of energy. When you realize that, it's so mind-bending and so crazy. When you really get that, you'll feel a liberation of energy, and it'll feel like you took ecstasy, because you are going to feel like you can do anything because you're awakened to your truth, that nothing in your past matters. Nothing about who you were in the past has anything to do with your future, what you can create. The moment you become conscious that you are the creator and decide to take action on that with the knowledge that you have 100% agency. People are like, well, I can't control it. What if someone I love dies? Or what if my business fails? Or what if you can't control outcomes? You can always control how you respond, and how you respond eventually will dictate your destiny.
Right. That's the key. Yeah. Because I was just going to ask you, like, how do we reconcile this with the stoic notion that you can only control your effort and your attitude? But what I think I hear you saying is that, well, if it's all illusory, the only truth that we can actually experience is that deepest voice of the heart that often whispers, like that's what is. So what can we choose to do is to respond to that, right? We can't control outcomes.
No.
But if you listen to that voice and it is the authentic voice, and you're heeding the call, your own call, then all of a sudden you become, I guess you become more of the creator than the created.
Absolutely. Think about a basic example. And I have one that's just in my own life that's comical. Years ago, I lost a $50,000 deal in one of my jobs, and it just wrecked me, man. I was like, I'm just on a losing streak. I was such a victim for weeks. I just couldn't get out of this mental rut. I was like, nothing seems to be working for me. And I kept repeating and affirming this. And guess what? I kept losing more and more deals. And I'm like, wow, I'm literally creating my reality. I'm creating this energetic vacuum that I'm in a loser frequency. And then that on my next sales call was rubbing off on the next prospect. And so I'm creating this internal reality that I'm a loser, nothing's working. And that truth follows me everywhere I go.
Wow.
Now, fast forward, I built up a much more bulletproof mindset with better self-talk, with better perspectives. I've rehearsed those and built them into my mind. Lost over $1 million in a day. I just smiled. I smiled and, like, metaphorically spit the blood out of my mouth and came back the next day and crushed. And I was like, nothing can faze me. Like, take everything away from me, I'll build it back faster. Like, that kind of mindset. Similar scenarios. One, I allowed myself to lose all my power, and I putted around for weeks and continued to attract more of the results that I was projecting energetically. The other one, I was able to rise above the frequency. I was able not to give my power away to an external circumstance and maintain my frequency so I can continue attracting in that orbit.
That's back to the stoic.
That's the question is, what is your threshold to give away your power? What has to happen for you to trade your frequency for a lower one? If you're feeling happy and joyful and excited about life, and you get a text from your girlfriend, your boyfriend, and there's a little fight, do you go into complete depression and freak out mode and decide to trade your joy for panic and fear and anxiety? Or do you maintain a neutral mentality and say, oh, I'm really grateful, whatever, I'm sure this will be fine, right? Those energetic states are critical because you're always attracting at your energetic emotional frequency, right? So what's it going to take? Do you spill coffee on yourself and you turn into a freaking crazy? Or do does something small happen at work where a coworker steps on your toes and you lose your mind? Like, what is the threshold? For me now, the things that used to throw me off my rocker are like pebbles, and they used to be mountains. And a lot of people will turn a pebble into a mountain based on their perspective. They'll use really intense language like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Or like, oh my God, this is monumental. This is the end.
People say, fuck my life.
Fuck my life, right? Like, oh my God, I can't catch a fucking break, whatever it may be. And you're literally just speaking your reality into existence. Wow. People don't understand that, spelling, you're casting spells.
Right.
Your words create your world. All of your language is constructive. Everything, every thought, every word. And when you speak something, by the way, it increases the frequency power by over 1,000, right? So by speaking, there's like at least a 10 times more likely example. So Trevor Moawad, who's a legendary mental coach, he coached Alabama and a lot of sports teams. And one thing that he made as a cultural rule inside these locker rooms is no one was ever allowed to speak negatively. Ever. Nothing.
Wow.
Nothing. He called it neutral thinking. At best, you can keep it in neutral, but you just never go below neutral because you're more likely to actually have that manifest. There's a famous baseball player said, man, I hope that this ball doesn't go through my glove. And it was a World Series game, and it was like a line drive, hit the ground, went right through his glove. Right? Like when you speak certain things, I was literally just at the Apple store the other day, and I took a detour on my golf cart, had low battery, to turn in my phone for $500. And I'm like, wouldn't that be crazy if like I'm here at Apple, I'm parked illegally right now. If I got towed and it cost me more than the money that this iPhone is going to get me. And I just thought about that. I'm like, that'd be hilarious. And then I'm driving down the causeway and my golf cart dies. The battery got zapped and I had to get it towed and it cost me more money than the actual return. And I had that thought. I'm like, man, I got to be careful with how I think. Wow. And people might be like, oh, this is crazy. But when you're tapped in, like I have manifested relationships where I thought about somebody, you know, icons, legends, people that I could only dream of meeting. And before you know it, I'm right next to them. And it's just so weird. Then you're like, this whole thing is such a hilarious comical illusion. Yeah. But then once you start untapping it, you realize how true it is. And you're like, okay, I'm actually going to start paying attention.
Yeah. I've heard someone say before that like, we're all avatars in the dream of God, something like that. And it is imagination that somehow interfaces with that primary reality that we can't actually perceive.
Yeah.
And I was telling you, yesterday, we watched this old internet video, My New Haircut. I haven't seen or thought about that thing in 20 years, right? Or maybe not 20 years. It's 2007, so 18 years. And we watched it, me and the guys here. And then literally the next morning, my buddy texts me out of the blue, like, oh, look at this video of that video. I'm like, what are the odds of it? I mean, that's just like a silly thing, but it just, you get these little reminders. My therapist says, he goes, what does he say about these? Like synchronicities, basically, right? That's a minor one, but always amazed, but never surprised. Like once you really start to accept what they are and that they happen when you're tapped in, that they do seem amazing. Like how could that possibly happen? But then after you've seen so many of them, you're like, well, it's not that surprising anymore.
Yeah. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. If you're anything like me, you understand that Bitcoin is something we can use every day to connect, to collaborate, and to build stronger, freer communities. As true Bitcoiners, you all know we are each responsible for onboarding more Bitcoiners. That's why I chose to partner with Cowbolt, an expense splitting app that settles in Bitcoin. It can be as simple as splitting a dinner bill. Your friend covers dinner and you reimburse them, but you send it back to him in Bitcoin. Now your friend has their first sats, and as I always say, where your money goes, the mind follows. By using Cowbolt to get Bitcoin into the hands of your friends and family, you can help us orange pill the world. Cowbolt is built to let you split costs, share expenses, and settle instantly, while always keeping full control of your keys. Cowbolt is simple, social, non-custodial, exactly how Bitcoin was meant to be used. If you're serious about Bitcoin, it's time to act like it. Download Cowbolt today on iOS or Android. To learn more, go to cowbolt.com. Again, that's Cowbolt, COWBOLT.com. Forget multivitamins and other supplements. Animal organs are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. You can get 100 times more nutrients from organs than you can from muscle meats. But the problem with eating organs is that they are difficult to find in stores, they are difficult to prepare, and even when they are prepared well, they often don't taste great. Thankfully, Heart and Soil Supplements has made consuming organ meats so much easier by providing powderized organs in capsule form. Organ meats include everything your body needs to thrive: vitamins, minerals, peptides, proteins, and growth factors. This is why organ meats were the most prized foods for our ancestors. Fortunately for us, Heart and Soil makes these treasured foods easily accessible. So go to heartandsoil.co today and use discount code BREEDLOVE to get started on your journey to optimal health and vitality. Again, that's heartandsoil.co, discount code BREEDLOVE. All right, let's kind of shift gears here. So you're not just a woo-woo spirituality, life philosophy guy. You're also a hardcore entrepreneur. Right? You've built a business from scratch in the past 5 years to very large size and growing very rapidly. I mean, a lot of young men in the world today, their primary focus, their primary desire, probably largely mimetic, is to get rich, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that at all, right? No. It's all about how you do it. But you have done it. So how, on this mission to get rich, like what are your points of advice for young men that are hungry? And I guess, like, if you'll linger on this a little bit, because it's not just about getting rich, right? Again, it's doing it in the right way, doing it for the right reasons, doing it with the right people. How should or could young men think about getting rich and doing it in a meaningful way?
I'll lay the groundwork like this, because the meaningful way, I think, comes with time. Not everything has to be altruistic. If getting a Lamborghini to impress girls motivates you, I say lean into it. Lean into it. Whatever motivates you, whatever vision you have that is going to propel you to be greater, even if it's, in hindsight, you're looking back, you're like, that was such bullshit. It's okay. That's part of your evolution. And so when you're young, look, there's a lot of pressure on men. We have a lot of pressure to be providers, protectors, to have status. We all ultimately just want love. And we see that success is the predominant way to get love from people. Sure. Yeah. If we didn't admire and worship success so much, I don't think people would be as motivated to make as much money. I don't think the lifestyle is really all that much better. It's cool, but it's not fulfilling and satiating. True. And so ultimately, the success we're really after is to fill that void of unworthiness for the most part. And I'll dare to say the richer you are, the deeper that hole is in many ways. Not every time, but oftentimes. But for young men, I think my best advice really, when you look at how do you get rich, right? What people say when they get rich, they want to build wealth, right? Essentially, people want to have enough money, enough resources to be financially secure so they can live life on their terms. And, if you got a lot to prove still and you're in your younger years, you probably want to impress people still and have enough money to do really cool shit and splurge on girls and go to clubs and whatever it may be. But the best advice I have that I wish I did early on is just lock in. Like I partied way too much. I was drinking too much. I wasn't serious. You have to make the transition from being an amateur to a pro, right? And amateurs, they clock in, they clock out. They're waiting for their employers to give them direction and what to learn. They're just showing up, doing a job, collecting stuff. They're not actually consciously asking themselves deeper questions like, hey, if I want to make $1 million, how do I get there? They're just kind of following whatever the guidelines are. They're not taking it in their hands. So ideally what you want to do is you have to develop a high income skill set. That's absolutely critical. You have to get really good at something that can't be copied by AI. So that's going to be a different challenge than when we were in our earlier careers. You have to build an actual high value skill set. I still believe sales is the single most valuable skill anyone can learn because AI can never replace it. Emotional intelligence and relationships will continue to drive the world, and AI will 10x your ability to do that. So learn a high income skill set, and then you got to find an opportunity vehicle. Now, I would recommend finding an uncapped opportunity vehicle. If you want to make $1 million and you're making 150 grand a year after tax, that could take you 20 years or more. And so find a high opportunity vehicle where you can deploy your skill sets, harness them, but there's uncapped commission upside, something of that sort. Whether it's starting your own business, whether that's joining an employer. I worked for a company, 3 actually, for 7 years to learn the game, to see the gaps, to see how I could innovate. So I put 7 years in for other people, and I made other people millions of dollars before I did it for myself. So I would say figure that out, test things. It's really important when you're developing these skills not to follow what everyone else is doing, right? Oh, everyone's doing AI, or now everyone's doing copywriting. Well, ask yourself, is this something you naturally have curiosity for and you have a natural proclivity for? Like forget passion. Are you actually good at it? I could never be great with numbers to be a great accountant. I could study like crazy, dude. I'd have 3 tutors to get a B in math, where I got A+ in English and won awards when I was just a little kid with no effort. So I'm like English, writing, communication. I love people. Absolutely hate sitting behind a computer looking at spreadsheets and products. Would never be a product CEO. I'm just not that guy. I'm a people person. And so by recognizing my ability to communicate, build relationships, my love for it, and my natural gifts for it, and not that I was great at first, but I was naturally drawn to learn it. So I could obsessively study it like for fun. And so, okay, I can get really good at sales, which if I study this long enough, if I'm one of the top 1%, will make millions. So you got to harness the skill set, find the right opportunity vehicle. That might mean you have to experiment and try a lot of things to figure out what you're actually really good at, that you could be the best at, that you're going to then pour 10 years into. None of this quick get rich quick bullshit. Don't trade fucking Forex. Don't be like aping into all these shit coins.
Day trader, crypto bro. Yeah.
Look, man, you got to find longevity. People want the quick rich shit. You got to build a sustainable skill set that makes you valuable forever. Right. So once you have that, that can make you a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, even millions if you become one of the best at a particular skill or set of skills in the right opportunity vehicle. And then worry about investing. Like, you got 10 grand, dude. It's going to take 1 billion years for that to mean anything. Focus on your earned income and improving your earned income to a certain point, and then start investing in assets you understand with a very intelligent risk portfolio. That's when your money starts making you money. And then when you get more advanced, that's when it gets into tax strategy and legal stuff and entities to protect your wealth. Because you think the game... For me, I thought getting rich was the end of the game. I'm like, if I just make a bunch of money, I'm set. And then I'm like, wait, now I got to worry about investments. And then I got to worry about assets and trust and protecting those interests. And then there's a long path to the financial game.
You get pushed out of, like, entrepreneurship is the economic game. You're creating something, creating value. But then once you've created some value and you have to preserve it, you get pushed into the political game. Right. You got to play all the jurisdictional games, the legal games. Like, it's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. But by and large, if you do those things, you'll be set up for success. I would also say you got to prioritize more than everything I just said, your personal development. You will never be able to outperform who you are. You'll never be able to outperform your character traits, your beliefs, and your skill sets. So go to work on you. Like, work on yourself. Work so hard on yourself. Do the inner work and figure out what bullshit programming that you have to rewire to set your mind up for success. Read incessant amount of books. Go pay for mentors. Go do free work for mentors. Find people that have the results you want, that embody the character traits you want, and do whatever you can to spend more time around them and learn from them. I made 300 grand at my last job, and 150 of that went to California taxes and federal, 150 left over. 50 was lifestyle. 100 of that was on coaching a year. And I would just keep spending myself broke.
Just investing in yourself.
Just investing in me. Because for me, I didn't have an intention of making 300K. I wanted to make hundreds of millions. So I'm like, I have to learn from people at that level, and I got to pay to play. So I was like, I'm betting on myself. The best investment you can make is in yourself. So you got to work on your personal growth, man. You got to read. You got to set up your habits. It took me like 9 years to become a millionaire in my mindset and my habits. And it took me 18 months to actually make multi-millions. Right. But it was like a 9-year process of cultivating who I was as a person to then be at the frequency of having millions of dollars. Right. So it's so funny. If I didn't shift my mindset and invest in seeing the world in different ways and invest in masterminds, and the real big thing for me was when I started paying for masterminds, and I was not an entrepreneur. I was the only guy who wasn't an entrepreneur in the groups. And I would sit there, and it was that peer effect where I felt like I had to live up to my peers. I'm like, I hate being the only non-entrepreneur guy here. But 2, I got a front row view at what success looked like. And I saw that those guys were just not smarter than me, and they weren't harder working. They didn't have my discipline. A lot of those guys, I looked at them, I'm like, you're not as impressive as I imagined you were.
So that diffuses your self-limiting beliefs.
Yes. It takes success off of a pedestal and makes it accessible for you. Because I realized that the people that I admired were no different than me. And in many ways and in many facets, I was better than them. And so once I saw that, it kind of pissed me off. I was like, how are these people more successful than me? I was like, this must be something in here, and I got to learn how they think, what kind of moves they're making, because I know I can outlearn them. I know I can outwork them, and I know I have a voracious discipline and desire. And I'm like, I knew I had all these special gifts, but I didn't have the results to prove it. So I'm like, all right, well, let me try it out. And when I just took the leap and did it, that evidence revealed itself quickly.
And once again, it was the inner freedom that you leaned into and capitalized on that then manifested as the outer freedom, time, finance, location, right?
Yeah, I broke through that terror barrier in my mind of like, oh my God, am I going to fail starting a company? Am I going to look bad? There's an internal thing that I also had to still work against that past story, right? That if you ever put me in charge to lead something, I'm going to let everyone down. I had to go against that story.
Right.
And that's exactly how you break limiting beliefs. First, you identify them. They have to be in your awareness. Once you identify them, you have to create a new belief that right now does not exist in reality. It only exists at potential. And then you have to take sufficient action and generate sufficient evidence to make your brain logically believe that that is more true than the former.
This is right. Yeah.
And so I had to create that belief, and then I had to live inside of it and exercise no doubt, just certainty. I'm just completely brainwashed and enraptured in this idea of the future, to where the future I've created in my mind is more real than the future I can perceive with my five senses. And that's called reality distortion. And that is the character trait of every remarkable founder, is the ability to perceive a reality that does not yet exist, know the truth in your heart at the same or a greater level of what I can say about the objects in this room and my own name, with that level of certainty and knowing it's happening, and then ability to convince other people that that also is the truth.
Right.
But that has to be such a conviction for you internally that you kind of warp and bend energy and bend reality for other people.
Right.
Because you have such conviction, and anybody can develop that. And I would assert that your ability to do that early on in life is very critical. And the faster you're able to create that distortion field for yourself and block out the noise and block out your parents saying you should do this, or your friends saying you're going to fail at this, block them out and just do your thing and honor your voice, honor that desire in your heart, and work tirelessly towards it with positive expectation, with the full belief that it's going to happen. It's only a matter of time before you win. And I think that I wish I got there earlier. It took me a long time. I battled with terrible self-esteem for most of my life. I felt completely not enough, and I still don't feel enough in some ways, and I'm still going through some of that. I don't think, again, success, material things outside of you can't take that away. That's deep inner work. But I wish more young guys understood that. Like, don't be boozing all the time. You know, you can have your fun with women, but don't let that be your focus. Make your purpose first. Invest in yourself deeply. Get around the right people, the right information, podcasts like this that elevate your mind, your consciousness, curate your diet, your information diet, curate your environment. You gotta really take responsibility for aligning your existing life and say, do the people around me, is the information I'm consuming, are these environments I'm occupying, are these aligned and consistent with the future I want to create? And then you have to have the courage and the discipline to say no against the influence of the people that you want approval from, to follow your own compass and do it your way. And they might shit on you for a while, but you're going to get the last laugh, because in 10 years, they're going to wish they took your path.
That is wildly motivating. There occurs to me that there's a bit of like a chicken and an egg problem here, though, because you need to create this belief structure about yourself that you are on the frequency to achieve the things you are setting out to achieve. But that also requires some, we can't just fabricate our beliefs out of nothing, right? Be like, oh, I just believe everyone loves me. It's like, you could say that, but what? That doesn't make any sense, right? I don't actually believe that.
Yeah.
So you need to get this empirical validation for your belief structure, touching the real world and creating proof points, basically, right? And so, but you also, so there needs to be this sort of retrospective proof or evidence, let's say, not proof. But you also need that thing to go that direction that you're looking to go. So like, how do we wrestle with this kind of chicken and the egg problem of our beliefs either limiting us or unleashing us? Like, how do you think about this? It sounds like it's something more dynamic than it is static.
That's a really good point. I believe we have to anchor our beliefs to our effort. Okay. I believe if you anchor beliefs to effort, it works, because if I say this is the destination I want to travel to, and this is where I want to be, how would that person act that has those things? If I start acting like that person, I'm already him, and it's just a matter of time before those results come to me.
So this goes back to the Stoic thing, because they say you can only control your effort and your attitude. So you're saying anchor your belief structure to your effort and your attitude.
Absolutely. If you're saying, hey, Chris, I want to get really jacked. I want to just be the best physical version of myself, which I think you've already achieved a few times over. If you're telling me that and you have a vision of what you look like, then I'm going to look at your calendar. I'm going to say, show me where on your calendar you have demonstrated actions that reflects these values and this desire that you have. Okay, cool. You have your time blocks for the gym 5 times a week. You've got your meal prep here. Okay. Well, how are you showing up at the gym? Are you attacking your workouts like a savage? Are you documenting things? Are you taking advice from coaches? How are your behaviors aligning to the outcomes you want? Are they aligned? And it's only a matter of time and it's obvious? Or are you delusional and telling me you want to do this, but you're doing like shake weights, right? And then you're eating pizzas and you're like, dude, I don't need to track macros. It's like, all right, dude, well, you're delusional because increasing your frequency, I think it's not only emotions, I think it's increasing your knowledge. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
It's aligning to truth, and truth at a emotional level is love, and truth at an intellectual level is just the correct, accurate knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. And so the more you can align to truth, if I have all these things. So when I started my business, I was like, man, I'm a millionaire. And I wasn't. I was like, you're going broker by the day, and your $2,000 a month rent is starting to get real fucking stressful. And everything in my cognitive framework was all wrong. And I was like, okay, I'm going to sit here. I'm not getting up every fucking day until I feel abundant, until I feel like a millionaire. And I would sit there and just keep envisioning things. And sometimes it'd take me hours. Yeah. But I was like, I don't want to go operate today in a feeling of lack because I know I'm just separate from what I want. I'm repelling what I want. Wow. So I took extreme radical ownership of my vibration and what I was creating with my mind. And I would write it down. I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm a millionaire. I'm so happy and grateful. This is how it feels. I would just journal it to reinforce it. Because again, we talk about programming humans. Yeah. When you're in a relaxed state, now you can't do this in beta. Right now we're in a mid beta probably. We're in a very alert conversation. Our executive center's turned on. We're very alert. If we were to just breathe and chill out, we'd go into alpha and then we get into theta where you're getting
start to melt.
Yeah. You're really relaxed and it's the door to the subconscious is flipped on. And when you're rehearsing things in that state, they're directly impressing as memories. So you're actually creating synthetic memories. They're real memories, but they're synthetic. You manufacture them in your own mind, but they're recorded the same way. Wow. And so I took a lot of responsibility for doing that, but I just kept sitting there until I felt that. And then I would show up and I would transfer the energy of the guy who owns the #1 firm in the world, who's already a millionaire. I didn't come off as desperate like I need you. I came off like I already had every client in the world and you'd be lucky to work with me. That's reality distortion. I created that. I created that. And so that was my big unlock, and realizing we're all going to do that. But I was up at 5 a.m. I had an hour routine. I then worked relentlessly, tirelessly till about 10 p.m. every night. And that was 6.5 days a week. So I put roughly 90 to 100 hours a weekend for the first 2.5 years. And then over time, I just did such amount of volume that it'd be unreasonable for me not to win. And then over time, I started collecting evidence. It took time, but at first, I felt like a god because I wasn't operating like a human. Most humans, I want to watch Netflix. I want to eat like shit. I don't want to wake up at 5 a.m. That's the human in you, right? That's the lazy survival freaking caveman in you. Just wants to sit in your cave and fucking, I don't know, eat and chill. Yeah. But when it comes down to me, I was like, I'm going to overcome my human. I'm going to overcome that voice in me, that inner bitch. And I'm going to lead with my spirit. I'm going to break my body, my mind down and push myself as hard as I can, be as productive, intense, and focused as I can to where I'm operating at a frequency that most people could never dream of. And I'm like, if I took action and I iterated on it and reflected and got better and worked 2 to 2.5 times as hard as anyone else in the world, then logically would I be successful? Yeah. So it was easy for me to feel like I was going to be successful because my work ethic was so ridiculous and I was learning at such a fast pace that I'm like, I just don't see anyone doing this. I'm like, why would I think that I'm not going to win?
I see. Would you rather have 1 Bitcoin today or 2 Bitcoin a few years from now? Bitcoin mining is a tried and true strategy for accumulating Bitcoin. Over a 2 to 4 year time frame, successful miners have consistently accumulated more Bitcoin than they otherwise would with a traditional dollar cost average strategy. Blockware mining as a service enables you to start mining Bitcoin from your laptop. Blockware handles everything from securing the miners to sourcing low-cost power to configuring the mining pool. They do it all. Plus, with Blockware's one-of-a-kind mining marketplace, you can buy and sell live Bitcoin miners with just a few keystrokes. In this marketplace, buyers get to purchase live machines at vetted facilities, enabling them to mine with zero lead time. and sellers get the opportunity to liquidate their machines and hosting contracts at will. This means you can mine Bitcoin with zero long-term commitment and high liquidity on your mining rigs. Blockware will even cover your energy bill for 1 week per mining rig when you sign up at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. Again, that's 1 free week of Bitcoin mining at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. And on top of this offer, you can also use code BREEDLOVE to get $100 off your first mining rig with Blockware Solutions. Have you ever wanted to start a business in the Bitcoin space? If so, then the Wolf Startup Accelerator could be for you. Wolf is the first startup accelerator dedicated exclusively to businesses developing in the Bitcoin Lightning Network. 4 times each year, Wolf brings teams from around the world to New York City to work with like-minded entrepreneurs, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with Bitcoin and Lightning. The program is designed to help early-stage companies achieve product-market fit, develop their brand, secure early-stage funding, and grow businesses that fuel the global adoption of Bitcoin. Go to wolfnyc.com to learn more or apply today. Again, that's Wolf, WOLFNYC.com. You've talked about this on a podcast I listened in preparing for this, the idea of the importance of like radical, deep, intrinsic motivation to do things like that, right? Mm-hmm. Most people are not going to work 100 hours a week. I mean, that is insane. I don't know how you did that for so long. And we talked about this when we had dinner with the guys a few months back, like, you know, all successful guys sitting at the table, but everyone, immediately we went into our trauma, right? It's like, where did your motivation come from? Every one of us went into like some bad experience in our life that we had somehow judoed into becoming, doing something in life, gaining accomplishment across whatever dimension we had decided for. So what is your deep motive to go and push yourself that hard? Where does that come from for you?
I think for me, I've done a lot of reflection on this. When I was a kid, the dominant feeling I had was loneliness. Loneliness. And so moved around from my mom's job, had to make new friends. I was kind of a weird kid. Like I was the creative, sensitive kid. I wasn't like this alpha male athlete that people might perceive me as today in some ways. I was just a kid who wanted love and connection. I was very sensitive, but I was alone. I would go into these new environments. I didn't have certain friends. I'd be dropped off at daycare, felt alone. I didn't feel like I was part of the cool kids groups. I just felt very ostracized. And even going into, middle school, high school, especially, that just kept building. I just felt so alone to the point where in high school, I started selling drugs. I got addicted to drugs, had overdoses by 15. Wow. I was with any group of people that would give me validation and love. And, in that particular group that I fell into, it was sell drugs and get in fights. And that's how you're going to get our respect and our love. So I built a character to be effective in that environment. And as I went through life, that deep feeling of loneliness and not belonging, I think was the biggest void in me and still is to this day. I think I've just become more conscious and learn how to alchemize that into positive ways. But it's hilarious because I believe that your voids create your values, right? So my void when I was a kid is I felt so alone. I didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't feel like I was special, and I just wanted to be with the cool kids. Well, if you fast forward, what's my company, right? We're a talent agency for technology companies, and it's my job to literally know every major founder, executive, investor, to network with billionaires, to have the most profound network of successful people. Yeah. And in hindsight, looking back, it's like I was building this network of thousands of people to where I'd have so many friends that I would be able to permanently insulate myself from ever feeling alone again. Wow. And not only that, but I've always wanted to work with the hottest companies like Quantum. I was already successful-ish in my last company. I wanted to go into startups because I wanted to work with like the most iconic CEOs before they were who they were. I was like, I want to build the next Facebook, the next Uber, but I want to be in the trenches with the CEOs. And how do I get access to those CEOs? Because that's who I want to be in the circles of. And so I literally cultivated my skill sets around how do I get in front of those people and build relationships with them. So I didn't even know how to do executive recruiting, but I taught myself because I was so motivated to be in those circles. And it's hilarious looking back now, like a lot of what I've done. It's all been driven by relationships in the spiritual sense, in the altruistic sense. Like I've always just wanted love and to connect with people that I love and I'm inspired by, to feel like I belong, to feel important. Right. And so it manifested me in totally overcorrecting and just building this giant network. So I always know all the interesting people. I always have friends, and I think the big one for me that I've had to detach from or kill recently is that I need to perform for love. Right. I need to perform for love. And I'm like, who would I be to all my friends and my family if I wasn't this? Yeah. Right. Would people even want to be with me? Would I be valuable to them? And so I've overcorrected on success, because the more successful I am, if someone leaves me or abandons me, then I can just revert that back to, well, it's their loss. Look at who I am. Right. And so that's a huge protection mechanism. Yeah. And I'm like, why am I basing my worth and value in my performance? Yeah. And I've even caught myself doing that this year. Right. So this is a never ending journey. It's a beautiful expedition of self-exploration. And I look at it, man, like this was a really powerful, for me, visual that really changed my life. We have an axis, a graph, right? Which one is vertical and which one is horizontal? There's like
Y is vertical, X is horizontal.
Okay, so we got a graph. We've got Y horizontal, X Y vertical, X horizontal, and X is your goal line and Y is your soul line.
Okay, goal and soul. Okay,
goal and soul line. So your goal line is everything you want to accomplish in this world. That is the amount of money you want to make, the accolades you want. Maybe it's Forbes 30/30. Maybe it's the car you want. Maybe you want to get married. It's all the results you want to generate in this world. And then the soul line is basically your spiritual evolution, your emotions. And most of us, including me for most of my life, we're only focused on the goal line. Right. Like, how do I get what I want at any cost? Even if I feel like shit, even if I have to sacrifice my health, my mental well-being, everything, I got to get my goal line. And you miss the soul line. Well, what's the energy you're creating from? Are you creating from fear, anger, and lack in the pursuit of all those things? Or are you creating from love, inspiration, and gratitude? Right. So now when I look at my goals, there's a while added. I want I want X, Y, and Z while feeling X, Y, and Z. And I've noticed that.
So you're trying to hit like a slope of 1 on that graph.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I don't want to have a low frequency Y axis and accomplish everything here, because what the fuck is the point of that? Right. Why would I want to achieve everything and feel like shit? And so when I look at that, I was like, how do I ascend up the Y axis? Because this is the inner wealth we talked about. How do I increase my inner wealth? And funny enough, by focusing on the Y axis, my X axis gets bigger and bigger, right? It's all a matter of focus. But I'm like, cool, well, I have to release negative emotions and I have to increase things that propagate positive emotions. And so I realized that for me, it was a self-exploration and adventure of releasing the things that were holding me back, because all the trauma, all the negative beliefs, the toxic energy that we hold in the cells of our tissues, they weigh us down, right? And so it's the equivalent of a hot air balloon, right? What do you do when you want the hot air balloon to ascend? You drop off the sandbags. Let me drop off that anger. Let me drop off that guilt. Let me drop off that resentment. Let me drop off that limiting belief of who I can't be because of some bullshit that happened when I was 9. Let me just drop these off. I'm not adding anything. And I'm just floating higher and higher into consciousness, into enlightenment. And so much of that for me has been letting go. It's been letting go of everything that I am not. And learning to love myself, learning to forgive myself, loving the little kid that I got beat up a lot, and I hated how weak I was in certain scenarios when I was a kid. And so that forced me to overcorrect and build this character that like was fake hard, right? I would just go fight just to prove that I was not a pussy, right? But then again, I had to let go of that and go give that kid love and say, hey man, I love you. Like you're not a pussy. You're just in a tough situation. Shit, I would have done the same thing and I am you. So yeah, I would have. But you know what I mean? It's like, it's that process. And then again, everything else we talked about, how you're consciously curating your life to stay in the high frequency. That's where everything beautiful is born out of. So I think about that a lot. I want to chase goals, but I do not want the goal at the expense of the emotion I want. Because at the end of the day, every goal that we're looking to pursue is because we want a specific emotional payoff. I want to make $1 million because I want to feel respected, admired, loved. I want to feel safe. I want to feel secure. So why, if I want these emotions and that's the end state I want, and that's the whole driver, then why am I denying myself of that?
Yeah. Something you were just talking about brought this up for me. I think it's related, and I struggle with this one a lot. Like, it's this philosophically unsolved thing. The idea that, it was one of my friends that posed this to me a while ago. As a man, how to separate my self-worth or identity. And I'm a little bit more inclined to think that I could separate my self-worth from my accomplishments, but not so much my identity. And the example I was going to share with you is like, for me, if I all of a sudden couldn't provide for my wife or my family tomorrow, right? Something happens, there's a terrible accident or whatever, it just disappears somehow. When I think about that, I feel like I would feel very empty and very like all my sense of purpose in the world would have been taken from me with my ability to provide for those who I love. And so does that mean then my identity and or self-worth is then bound up with my accomplishments? Because that doesn't seem good. It seems like you kind of have this independent sense of at least self-worth. Identity maybe is more so tied to these things, but I don't know.
Let's untangle it.
Let's untangle it, please.
Let's untangle it. So I'm gonna untangle self-worth from identity, because identity is a construct we create from our ego to help us achieve outcomes. And it can be extremely useful, and it can also be a prison. Right? Your ego or your identity will just insulate certain belief systems to help you get certain results.
And the identity is the belief systems,
yes,
right? Yes,
correct.
It's a compilation of your
beliefs.
beliefs.
It's the invisible force, unseen, that gives you your sense of who you are, your concept of yourself, what you can do, what the world is,
right?
That unconsciously dictates all your actions, right? So your identity is extremely important. You can never outperform your identity. You'll never outperform what you think you're worth, what you think you're capable of. And so we have the identity layer, and then self-worth is more intrinsic. It's more your soul, right? Like, where are you basing your worth off of? And a lot of us, look, we all have egos. We're, to the extent that the ego is the matrix, we're trapped there forever to some extent. We can ascend past it in moments, but I think we got to use our egos, use our identities to serve us, but also know where their limits are. I've struggled with this too, because I'm like, okay, if I didn't have my business, if I didn't have my accolades, who would I be? And would I feel as good about myself as I do? Because when I didn't have them, I didn't. And I told myself, I need to make X amount of millions before I'll even allow love into my life, because I don't want to fall in love and have the fear of not being able to provide for my kids and my wife, and have to endure the shame of not being able to do that. And so I blocked off love in my life until I hit certain financial metrics to then allow myself to receive the love that was always there for me. And shit, I'm probably still working through that. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know if it all goes away. You just become more conscious and mature with it. But for me, the self-worth thing has to be more anchored to character, right? For me, the more conscious you become is, am I proud? And even pride can be a weary word to use there, but
virtuous pride.
Virtuous pride, not egotistical pride. Like, am I proud of who I am? Can I look in the mirror and say, hey, I admire that guy staring back, right? Do I honor how I show up in the world? And if I lost everything, would I be proud of who I am?
Right.
And one of my coaches was working through an exercise with me, because he was helping me get rid of my detachments. Because whenever you're attached to something, that's where fear is born. And fear is the enemy of your dreams, right? Because whenever you're afraid of something, you're not in your heart, you're not in your courage. And so we did an exercise, and he's like, all right, Chris, your business burned down. You just filed Chapter 11. Everyone left you. Who are you? And how would people know who you are? So let's pretend we went to Papua New Guinea and we're with a tribe there, and they've never seen people like you before, and they've never seen you before, and they can't even communicate with you, and they don't even have the lingo for you to tell them about all your awesome business accomplishments. How would they know who you are? How would they feel the difference in you, between you and other people? I was like, wow, that's a really interesting question. They don't have the social and mental constructs for me to even be impressive to them. How would they know me? How would they know that there's something different about Chris? And it's my presence. It's my energy. It's my level of calmness in my own heart. It's my level of focus, my level of presence, my level of confidence and charisma because I trust myself, because I've showed up in alignment with my intentions for so long that when I say something's going to happen, it does. There's all this inner work and character that was forged through fire that no matter what you take away from me, even if I can't speak your language and you're a cannibal on an island in Papua New Guinea, you will feel me. You will know me. You'll know my spirit. It'll come through my expression. I don't need these external accolades to symbolize who I am. I am. Right. And that was a powerful realization for me, is I have forged a character. I have went into the fire. I have overcome so much fucking pain in my life. Yet I'm here and I'm smiling and I'm more optimistic than ever. And I've empowered people and I've been generous and I've helped transform lives and I've been loving. And I'm like, no one can take that away from me. You know, and I can always rebuild, but no one can take that away from me. And that's what makes me unique. That's what makes others unique. It's your unique stories, what you overcome. And hopefully you've been able to not be defined by your failures, but refined by them. And you've kept your heart open despite the trauma, and you've gone on to be someone that you are proud of being. And I think if that is our primary aim, is to be somebody that we're proud of, to look in the mirror and admire yourself and say, what would I need to do? How would I need to think, speak, and act for me to truly be proud of myself and admire that person? That really, for me, is the only direct path, because everything outside of us, dude, we can't fucking control it. And, you know, I'd hope that most of my friends, if everything burned down and I could create no value for them economically or with connections, just my presence, my energy, my friendship, my spirit would, that would be the thing they stuck around for.
It's okay. So I hear you on that. That makes sense, but I want to take it maybe a level further. This idea of being able to look at yourself in the mirror and be virtuously proud of yourself. You know, people often also say, can you sleep at night? You know, stuff like this, like being okay with who you are, being comfortable in your own skin, being proud of yourself in a virtuous way, not a egotistical way, as you said. I think that comes from, or I would like to think that if I adhere to controlling my effort and my attitude in most situations, which I don't think any of us can do perfectly, but you know, if I, on balance, look back at my life and say, okay, I really did the things that I gave the best effort and the best attitude in doing the things that I chose to do. Right. I guess there's another portion of that where it's like, did you choose the right things? But we'll set that one aside. That's the listening to the heart thing again. To level up the thought experiment, like the one that I use is like, if I became, we'll take the chapter 11, business disappearing, all your wealth disappearing, but then also becoming like paraplegic, like physically completely disabled. And I'm like, what? And again, this is just like a visualization thing and like something to reflect upon. I'm not trying to be morbid or anything, but it's hopefully a useful framing for actually getting to what is in here, right? What is your true self-worth? What is your identity separate from all these accomplishments, all these accolades, as you say? And when I confront that image of not being able to be useful or provide for those that I love, I find my self falling apart pretty quickly. And so that's where I'm at with that one. It's like, I don't know if you can conquer it. I don't know. I just, so I don't know if that changes anything that you just said, but.
Look, I think that's the truth of it. Like, I don't think everything for me is conceptual, right? All we did was thought exercises. It hasn't happened. Now, I had friends that have lost hundreds of millions and had to rebuild, and holy shit, that did not look like a fun journey. But that said, for me, look, I am a very purpose-driven person, and I believe I have a role on this planet. It's first to, make myself valuable, then it's to be as valuable as I can for my friends, my family, and the world, right? I have ambitions to transform a lot of lives. That is where I get a lot of my self-esteem, that I'm that type of person who will go through the fire in service of other people. And so even if I lost everything, I think that identity would remain, right? All right, time to get back up and rebuild again. because this is still my central mission. And it might be a really tough couple months, maybe a couple years. But there's an identity I'm locked into. This is who I am for myself in the world. And so I have enough confidence now in myself to say, hey, I know you could do it again. Now, it wouldn't be as fun, or maybe it would be. Again, that's all a perspective thing too. Maybe it's like, hey, again, it's a mental frame. Everything burns down. I'm like, wow, this is fucking awesome. Do you know how cool this is going to be in my book? Like, this is going to be a sick chapter in my book. Like, think about watching a movie where everything goes right.
Yeah.
How fucking boring.
Yeah.
Like, so whenever I'm in a real shitstorm, I just think, man, this is going to make a really good story. Like, this is going to make my book worth reading.
Is that coming back to the gratitude in the adversity?
I think it's like a natural gratitude backed into the idea for me that like one of my primary motives in life is to live an interesting story. Because there was one point in my life where I was just climbing the corporate ladder and I was doing what everyone told me to do. And I didn't even care if bad things happened to me. I'm like, let's just make it interesting. Like I just felt like I was uninteresting and my life was uninteresting and I was not the one holding the pen writing the story. And so I read this quote on Instagram when I was 23 years old. It said, if your life was a book, would you read it? And I clearly said to myself, no, I wouldn't read my fucking book. And so within that same week, I had quit my job, gave away everything I owned, packed a backpack and did a one-way trip to the Philippines, which turned into 6 continents, 25 countries, a blazing love affair, being a yoga teacher in India, teaching in Ghana and Kenya, and riding a motorcycle across Vietnam, and just going out there and creating myself in a very intense, fast-paced way. And so, you know, I think for me, I just want to live a remarkable life. I don't want to live anything ordinary. I think life is too magical and short to settle for normal, to play in your comfort zone. So even if I fuck up and make tons of mistakes, I don't care. Like I would rather do that than live a constrained life without freedom, where I'm allowing fear to govern my decisions. Ultimately, fear always motivates us. But the question is, do you fear the negative outcomes or do you fear the regret? And I'm way more afraid of regret. I am way more afraid of getting to the end of my life and saying I lived below the life I could have lived because I did not have the courage to be myself. I did not have the courage to express my opinions. I didn't have the courage to pursue what really lit my heart on fire. And I lived this pragmatic life that everyone else patted me for because I was afraid to look bad. And that's one thing I could never get over. So all that to be said, I think it's hard to say because I'm sure I base so much of my self-confidence on what I've built so far. And if I lost it, it might be momentarily shocked, but I know that I would rebuild it because of who I am, right? I didn't win the lottery and get lucky. I built this shit. I built this motherfucker. I am who I am and I can recreate the results I have because I am him. And so I think if you build that level of respect and credibility with yourself, I think it might not make that disappear, but I think it gives you a bit more peace.
Yeah, I think that's actually a beautiful way to look at it, is like no matter the magnitude of the adversity or the tragedy that comes into your life, well, I've seen a lot of really tragic movies that are amazing movies. You know, they might have a really rough ending or a really rough spot or whatever, but that's what makes it good in a way. So, and it does tie into that gratitude thing for me too, like trying to find the gratitude in the adversity. That seems key to not only coming to terms with it, maybe accepting it for what it is, but also getting on a firm footing in those conditions of adversity such that you can move out of it, move forward.
100%. Napoleon Hill had a term called the seed of equivalent benefit. So anytime something negative, perceiving negative has happened to you, there's always a diametrically equal positive that happened. But we're so focused on the door that closed, we don't see the one that's open. Right. And so, yeah, you broke up, your girlfriend broke up with you, your heart's broken, you're depressed, you can't eat for 2 weeks, you lost 20 pounds, you lost all your gains. Yeah, that sucks. But shit, you just learned the lessons you needed to actually meet your real wife. That is the love of your life that you had to go forge in the fire and suffer to be worthy of that gift, because you had to cultivate your character in order to receive that effectively. And or your business burns down. Oh my God. Well, what about Edison and his 1,000 failed experiments before the light bulb? Right. Like, there's just so many cases in society where this thing happens and you think it's shit. At least for me, every great thing in my life I can tie back to a massive failure, something super traumatic on the other side of it, right?
So it's not failure, and this sounds weird too. It's like failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of the process of success.
Failure and success are cousins, man. They might even be brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Like you can't, and again, failure is like a very emotionally charged word, right? I'm going to strip the emotion out of it. Failure is data, period.
Right.
Right. You only become a failure when you stop seeking more data and you quit.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So when the outcome diverges from your intention, we would typically call that a failure.
Yeah.
But as long as you're learning from that experience, then it's data, as you're saying.
The question is, are your failures defining you or refining you?
Refining you. Okay.
Are you iterating and improving and then taking new actions?
Yeah. Winning or learning, basically.
Winning or learning. And again, it's hilarious because people hear certain things like that so often, they don't examine them.
Right.
Like the most tried advice is the least examined.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And that's fucking
so
trite for a reason because it's so good.
Yeah.
So let's unpack it for an hour and really look at what's there and say, how do I apply this to my life?
Yes.
And you'll get the gold.
Yes. Okay. Bitcoin custody is evolving. Both self-custody and single third-party custody come with significant risk and trade-offs. Onramp is pioneering a new standard, multi-institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure, adding fault tolerance and redundancy to your setup. Onramp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated cold storage multi-sig vault, guarded by 3 independent institutional-grade custodians, none of which that have unilateral control over your assets. More than just security, Onramp simplifies inheritance and estate planning, ensuring your Bitcoin wealth moves seamlessly to your loved ones without the risk and complexities of self-custody. Easily designate beneficiaries right in the Onramp dashboard, eliminating the need for unreliable treasure maps or other complex key sharing schemes. You can also avoid the probate process and ensure your heirs receive their Bitcoin securely with legal title transfers designed to keep your wealth intact for generations. As Bitcoin continues to appreciate, Onramp helps you seamlessly access financial services, from inheritance and insurance to trading, loans, IRAs, and more, all without compromising on security. And importantly, the onboarding process is fast and frictionless. I set up my own Onramp account, and it was far easier than dealing with hardware wallets or traditional self-custody setups. The team walked me through everything step by step, making sure I had a secure, reliant setup for my Bitcoin wealth. Secure your generational wealth with confidence. Schedule a consultation with the Onramp team today at onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. Again, that's onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. One of my highest health priorities is keeping my brain in top shape. To take care of my brain power, I do many things, such as striving to read, write, exercise, and meditate daily. One of the latest tools in my brain power toolkit is MindLab Pro. MindLab Pro is a nootropic supplement that is scientifically proven to enhance your brain power. When I take MindLab Pro, my mind feels like it has a better grip on the world, my thinking is more lucid, and the articulation of my speech is radically improved. MindLab Pro has been tested in rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials and has been proven to enhance brain power for users in every age group. MindLab Pro is an advanced formulation of 11 nootropic ingredients and is backed by research from over 1,400 human trials conducted over the past 32 years. So if you're looking to enhance your brain power, MindLab Pro is an excellent solution. Go to mindlabpro.com/breedlove to start enhancing your brain power today. Again, that's mindlabpro.com/breedlove. You said something interesting. I'm shifting gears now because I was listening to some of your podcasts to prepare for this. And at one point you said talent density is king. Mm-hmm. What in the hell does that mean?
Look, when you're building something, mm-hmm. the team you build in a company is the company you build. Mm-hmm. It's all about the team, mm-hmm. right? If you look at each individual on a team, what's the market cap of each individual? Mm-hmm. What's the potential, the capacity of each individual? and you combine that across the company, that will determine the destiny of your company. And the first roughly 10, 20 people in your company will determine your destiny, because it's going to be subsequently harder to hire any better people than you currently have. Right. Steve Jobs was famous for saying like a small team of A players can run circles around a team of B and C players. Yeah. And there's these different measurements where if you look at a really good engineer, they can get to about a 50-to-1 ratio where they're 50 times more powerful than one engineer. Wow. And there's different levels of magnitude of asymmetric impact in certain CEO roles. You look at Steve Jobs, he's probably 1 to 20,000, maybe even 1 to 1 million. And maybe he's completely irreplaceable where there's not even a number scale that can replace him.
I would say on paper, the greatest entrepreneur that ever lived, right? In terms of the comeback story and all these things.
Right. And if you look at what just happened recently where Sam Altman just bought Johnny Ive's company for $6.5 billion. It's a 50 employee company. I don't know what the revenue is, but I'm sure it's not very high. They bought Johnny Ive for $6.5 billion. They bought an employee for $6.5 billion. I'm sure he's got some tech and all that, but that's because great talent is more or less irreplaceable. So the strength, the density of a team is going to determine its output. Myself and 3 other guys originally built the brand for our company. You put myself and 3 other guys against a 50-person company, we ate their lunches. They couldn't even come close. So we were able to turn the tides in the market and build a brand with just a very small team that collectively were just 10, 20, 30-to-1 type people. And so when you're building a company, you're optimizing for density early. And if you look at PayPal as an example, I would argue that they probably had the best founding and executive team in the history of any company. Keith Raboy, one of the executives there, he talks about you have to have barrels in a company. These are people that you can give giant initiatives, giant problems, and they can single-handedly go build products, companies, et cetera. A lot of them could be entrepreneurs, but they can own everything end to end, operate in ambiguity, scale large units. I mean, they're people you can shoot people through. They're leaders that can go out and have agency and build. Most companies that are billions of dollars, they have 2 or 3. PayPal, I think, had something like 13 to 14. Right, you had Reid Hoffman, who built LinkedIn. You had Peter Thiel, who was the angel in Facebook, was the founder. You have Max Levchin, who's now also the founder of Affirm. You have the CEOs of YouTube. You have all these iconic entrepreneurs. Elon Musk, right, who sold his company into PayPal and then reported into Peter. You have all these icons that went on to build multi-billion-dollar companies after every single one of them did, David Sachs included. And so their talent density was so remarkable early that they essentially had 14 entrepreneurs in a company building one thing. Wow. Right. And so when I'm hiring for companies, when I'm hiring for my own company, the thing I look at is talent density. It's, for me, one of the highest signals of if the company will succeed is you have a very compelling idea. It's directionally correct in a good market. Cool. Do you have the team that can pull it off? And the caliber of that team is going to determine everything. So for us, it's density. Do you have the most talented, remarkable, ambitious people in a very small group focused on one problem together? And if you can assemble that team, I think your probability of success skyrockets.
So let's focus on you specifically, how you built this team for yourself. You said it started with these 3 guys. Yeah. So like, what are the criteria by which you evaluate the talent of, how do you know when you've got A players? Yeah. And then how do you know, is it just A, B, C player, and then you just want A players together? Or are you trying to get certain types and flavors of A players
I think a simple framework to think through it is, if you lose a C player and they quit, you're relieved. You're like, I'm actually kind of glad that person's off the team. I'm glad they did it. If a B player quits, you're like, it stings a little bit, but we can live without him. An A player quits, you're freaking the fuck out. You're like, how the fuck did we lose this person? Like, this is.
So you need to do the visualization practice to identify.
You'll know who the A players are, because they are going to be so important to the organization. We're like, okay, if we lost them, this would be critical, or it would put us back a year or 2, or our organization is going to be different without them here. That's a true A player. And those people just tend to have extreme agency. So when I'm hiring for my team, for other companies, like there's generally 4 things that I look at, right? And there's different signals underneath them. But number 1 is signs of excellence, right? What can you show me on your resume that demonstrates you have excellence, both in your personal life and in the actual space we're working in, right? Number 2 is, do you have the DNA? For our respective culture, it's you're working your face off. You move with extreme urgency. You sweat the details. You have an obsession to learn, to perfect your craft, to be the best in the world. And that's reflected in how many questions you ask and how fast you iterate. You just want to be the best. And you're also a great team player. You want to win, but you elevate others, right? Do you have the DNA that aligns with our culture and our values? 3 is, have you done relevant work? You can be a super talented rocket scientist, but I run a talent business. So you display the first 2 signals really well, but like it's irrelevant, right? Or maybe you've been recruiting for giant companies and it's very different. So have you done relevant stuff to us, or do you have enough where you could pick that up very quickly? Because even if you're great, you have to be great for our DNA, for our environment, and from a skill set perspective to actually add value. And then number 4 is going to be culture fit. Like, other than the values, just pure energy, vibes. Do we see the world the same way? Do I want to work with you? And if those 4 things are there, then awesome. But I think depending on the level, like, you want to find people that are at least the 1%, but you want to be really, really focused on hiring people that are within the top 5 to 10 basis points in the world. That are, 5th to 10th percentile of the 1%.
Right.
And if you want to be a great investor, great entrepreneur, and you want to build elite teams, you have to learn how to train your filtering to perceive that. And I believe personally, you have to be one to perceive it. So when I understand the things that make me very effective, the level of discipline, output, the enthusiasm, the focus, my rate of learning and ability to pick up new information, my ability to connect and build relationships and break into new markets exceptionally fast. All these things, I'm like, okay, I have they call it cracked in the tech world, right? You're kind of just like, you're tweaky fast at things. I can do 100 phone calls a week. I can send out 1,500 messages a week, just like ridiculous amounts of volume and engine. So that's really key to our business. So I look for the intellectual aptitude of, can you ask curious questions? Do you have an intellectually sophisticated mind where if I teach you some new patterns, will you be able to pick them up quickly? Do you have the intellectual capacity to learn and the drive? And then do you have the engine? Do you have that dog in you? Right? Do you have that fucking ferociousness where you can lose 10 offers and lose $500,000 in a week, spit on the ground, get the blood out of your mouth and smile and come back the next day like nothing ever happened? Do you have that dog in you? Like, can you just grind relentlessly? And whenever you're hiring for your particular team, you want to identify what are truly the character traits that are going to best lead to the success in this particular role.
It's okay. If we're going so A players are in the top 1%, but they're more like the top 10% of the 1%.
I would say A players, probably top 5 to 10%.
Okay. And then, so when you say the top 5 to 10 basis points,
those people are typically founders or become founders at some point.
Okay.
But look at Johnny Ive. He's not
are those the barrels?
They can be. Barrels will be able to take on huge initiatives. Like there's savant individual contributors. Okay. But they're not barrels because you can't scale through them. Okay. You can't say, hey, go hire a team of 15 people and accomplish this giant mission.
So barrels more about throughput.
Yes. Okay. Because you're shooting ammunition through a barrel. Okay. Right? Where there's really talented ICs, but they're not barrels because they can't take in a giant initiative and run it autonomously. Individual contributor. So you have brilliant individual contributor people that are extraordinarily valuable, but barrels are people you can scale through.
Okay. So how much, it seems like just intuitively there would be a lot of hiring and firing to try to get to those people, but obviously that's not going to work so well in your business.
Often barrels don't present themselves in the interview process.
Barrels, but like trying to zero in on the A players. Like I'm thinking, I want to build a team with 20 fucking A players and have them set the tone for the rest of the organization's history. Yeah. How do I find those 20 A players? Yeah. Like what?
Dude, I've interviewed over 500 people and I have a team of just over 30 right now. And I had 50. So, we lost 18 something people. So it's an iterative process. It's painful. It's cost me a lot of money and time and it's been frustrating. But over time you learn from each missed hire. You say, what traits did they display that in retrospect made them not a good fit or made them unsuccessful? What backgrounds do they come from? And you're always experimenting and saying, okay, well, I thought this is what I wanted. I hired someone from the same company who was just successful, but what are they missing then? I was indexing on the wrong trait. Like, oh, they came from the same company, but they were on a different team, or they just didn't have the mentality, and I over-indexed on the resume, and I didn't index enough on the human, right? They came from the same company, same standards, but they're two fundamentally different humans that have different motivations and ways of being. And just because they came from the same environment, don't assume both of them will be great for your environment, right? So there's all these little iterations and learnings. But for me, I talked to this guy named Rahul, the CEO of Superhuman. It's a really amazing tech company. And I was like, man, I'm really struggling hiring my team. And I was still alone at the time. And he's like, you know what, dude? I already sold the company, went to go build this company. I still couldn't recruit anybody, even after selling a company. And I had to go build the whole MVP and raise the seed funding by myself. And then I was able to attract like the most remarkable guy ever from Twitter. And he's like, sometimes you just got to fucking go be that guy. And like, I was like, okay, I made a pact with myself. I was like, I'm going to become Kobe. I'm going to prove that I'm the best in the world.
The Kobe of
recruiting. The Kobe of recruiting.
Okay.
I'm going to prove it to myself.
Yeah.
And then once I do that, then I'll go build a super team. And I'm transitioning to a LeBron metaphor here. I'll just go like get all the best tier 1 players in the world and say, hey, look, I've got something big here. Come join. Let's join forces and just go take over. Right. And so that's what I did. And I was doing millions and millions and millions by myself. Then I started bringing on some people when there was, because people did not see the vision at first. And I don't blame them. I had nothing. I had nothing that they would be totally betting on me with no evidence.
Right.
And they, so it took me time to prove something out. And then people were like, whoa, there's something special here. And they caught on and they joined and we'd been together building, but I had to become him first. Because I literally, on one of my guys, I called him, I'm interviewing him for a client. I'm like, you know what? Maybe you'd be a great fit over here. Like, would you want to come over to the agency side? And he's like, I don't know. I was like, yeah, I mean, I made, I don't know, a couple $100,000 last month. And he's like, what? And I was like, yeah, I made a couple $100,000 last month and I'm just starting the company. And then kept picking up. And he's like, if you're really doing a couple $100,000 a month and you prove that to me, like, I'll fucking quit right now and join you. It was one of those. This
reminds me of Wolf on Wall Street.
It was the Wolf of Wall Street moment.
Yeah.
And this is Bryson, who I was telling you about, who actually is a huge fan of your show. He, next week, flew out to San Diego, interviewed, quit, and we made it happen. And now he's absolutely one of our most dominant, incredible performers and leaders in the company. Amazing. And it happened there. But I had to be someone impressive enough that people wanted to follow.
Right.
And I preach that still, like, go be someone great, go build a body of work that makes people want to work with you, because A players will never work for a B player.
Right.
You have to, you always have to keep your edge there. And then if you assemble that team of talent magnets, people with really impressive backgrounds that are really incredible, it makes all subsequent hires easier. Because people come and see that and they're like, oh my God, I want to be part of this team.
Yes, of
Travis Kalanick, after he built Uber, went and built Cloud Kitchens. And the first thing he did when he built Cloud Kitchens is all of his engineers were like L7, like super high level savants. Really hard to put that team together.
L7 is just
it's a level 7. It's like a principal, really high level technologist, right? And he put a whole room full of them, just like the most brilliant people ever. And he said it was just brutal to put that team together. But as soon as they got that team together, when everyone else came in, they're like, how could I not work with these guys?
Wow.
Like the level of talent in this room.
Right.
And so that's more or less what we've done. When you look at us, the density of talent, we have a lot of people that could be building their own companies. We have just a remarkable level of scale of remarkably talented people. And that density combined just gives us more throughput, more power that people just can't compete.
That's so fucking cool. I'm reminded here too, Steve Jobs also said something else about that A-player team, that they self-regulate, I think. He's like, once you get that many A players together, they're all competitive. They're all like, trying to not one up one another, but there's sort of a self-regulatory environment, I guess, because they're all pushing one another to excel. And so it makes the manager's job easier. I'm paraphrasing a lot here, but is that also true? Like that you get this sort of independence that you wouldn't have in a B or below?
I think both. I think great organizations to some extent are self-policing, because when you get enough very high performers that trust each other, that depend on each other, that want to keep a certain bar in their work, when people are not cutting it, they're not pulling their slack, everyone's like, what the hell's going on, man?
Right.
Like, we're moving at a certain pace. We want to, we're so bought in on this outcome that you're holding us back. You're going to get called out for it. Like, what are you doing with your time?
Right.
Like, we're all grinding. What are you doing? Right. So it kind of is like a bad organ that it gets rejected out of the business organism, so to speak. At the same time, I don't think most organizations are, maybe any, are fully self-policing. I do think you need a very strong leader up front, driving pace, driving standards, driving obsession with the detail. That's why most businesses, after the founder exits and a professional CEO comes in, go to shit.
Right.
You need someone who cares deeply, and you need a leader who has exceptionally high standards that people don't feel comfortable around. Otherwise, organizations
that
naturally
people don't feel comfortable around.
No, they don't feel
Can
comfortable.
you linger on that for a minute?
They don't feel comfortable bringing in their B selves.
Okay.
They don't feel comfortable showing up late to meetings. They don't feel comfortable not coming prepared. They don't feel comfortable not grinding and hitting their commitments because they do not want to be. They don't want to be scorned by the leader. They don't want to be ostracized, or just someone they respect and admire. And they don't want to let them down.
Okay. So they're seeing someone operate at a very high level, setting the pace, setting the standard that they are then scared to deviate from, not only in the eyes of the leader, but the eyes of their peers as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so that prompts them to stand up too. So you need someone leading that standard. And for me, if I walk into a room, I can always spot the leader, whoever has the highest standards, who's the most intense, who's driving the pace. Who's the one in the fucking weeds? Who's driving the details? Who just looks like they care more, right? That's the guy leading every time.
That is so cool.
And so you can identify that quickly.
Yeah.
It's almost neurotic where you're like, because every organization over time, if you do not press upon it with positive force, decays into entropy.
Yeah.
And as companies scale, entropy becomes more and more of a threat.
Yeah.
Because you tend to dilute your hiring bar because you want to meet customer demand. So you just keep hiring seats. You hire an A- player, then they hire a B- player, and then that B- player hires a C or D player. And so it starts cascading. And by the time, the original core firm that built the brand and reputation is doing less and less of the work over time because they're scaling through other people. And you get this very diluted version of the product. It'd be the equivalent of like getting source cocaine from Mexico and then that being cut between 14 distributors.
I thought you were going to go with like a fiat currency inflation metaphor.
Yeah, right. And then before you know it, you're sniffing fentanyl from China.
Yeah.
Right. You're like, what?
Right.
But you want to keep the purity of the source. So you have to be able to train you have to be able to train what makes you special and hire the right character traits in people. And the great hallmark of a leader is, can you create more leaders? Most people are afraid to hire people better than them because they'll usurp them and make them look bad. But a real leader knows you want to hire people that are better than you, that can usurp you, because that's the hallmark of a great leader. Can you create leaders that are better than you? Yeah. That is a huge shift that happened for me, because I went from wanting to be Kobe to wanting to be Phil Jackson. And so now I take pride in being the best coach and enabler of greatness. My next phase from here will be being Jeannie Buss, being the owner, where I'm not even on the court coaching, but I'm just owning different businesses. And they're fully functioning and thriving organisms absent of myself.
It's just occurring to me that the kid you described that was sensitive, you need to be sensitive in this business.
Yeah.
Right. It's the human business. I know every business is the human business, but recruiting perhaps more so than any of them. That you need to be really attuned to who's sitting across the table from you and really attuned to the wants of your client, right? The positions they're trying to fill. And then you need to match really well. So you found this, the sensitive kid where I assume that was probably perceived as a weakness, at least several times when you were a kid, but now you found this way to plug in as an adult and use it as a strength.
It's a great point, man. I used to think sensitivity was a huge weakness. It's like, man, why do I feel so strongly? Why can't I control certain things? Now I learned how to adapt over time, but ultimately, if you're saying what's the one differentiator you have, it's my compassion. I love people so deeply, and I'm so afraid of letting them down. I will move mountains to learn any skill that I must learn, to figure out any resource connection to make something happen. I just can't be stopped in that regard. And so it's because I care so much about them. I had COVID and I could barely breathe, and I was still working 16 hours a day because I had to build an executive team for a CEO that really needed those executives before his board meeting. And I was literally killing myself because I empathized with him so much. I could feel his pressure. I could feel his suffering. And that desire to feel close, to feel loved, to feel connected to humans. I love that when someone writes me after, Quantum built our whole executive team. we wouldn't be who we are without these guys. Like they completely transformed our business. That is so gratifying to me that I will do anything to make those things happen. So it's because I feel so deeply for people, you know, and again, like I went and taught English in Ghana and Kenya, right? Cambodia. And I felt so angry and so sad when I was with those kids there and I saw that they had no future available options. And they're like, I want to be a pilot. I want to be. And I knew they wouldn't be because I looked at the stats and it was like 95% were taxi drivers at best. And it pissed me off so bad because I built real bonds with these kids that prompted me to actually go build a nonprofit. And we just built our 6th school and have over 2,000 kids.
Wow.
Right. Because I felt that pain.
Yeah.
And then, but my thing is feel the pain.
Right.
But have compassion, not empathy. Empathy means you feel it and you feel sorry. Compassion is rooted in action. I feel that and now I'm going to take action, right? Like it's the man walking down the road, sees the old man with a big boulder on top of him. And the first guy's like, oh my God, I feel your pain. He has empathy, right? I feel your pain. I'm so sorry. And he keeps walking. And then the next guy comes and he's compassionate and he says, oh shit, there's a rock on you. Let me get that off you. And he musters his strength and pulls the rock off the guy and saves his leg, right? I'm a compassion guy. I deeply feel for humanity and I believe feeling is not enough. It's an impetus to act. And I believe it is my responsibility to solve the problems in the world that I can solve that I'm uniquely inspired to do.
Beautiful. Yeah, to be really attuned to people's pain points. I mean, that is so essential to delivering customer satisfaction. Right, you need to really understand what the pain is, but then you need to also be action oriented.
That's a great point.
That makes sense. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably get it. You get that Bitcoin upends everything that state-sponsored schools teach us about money. For those who get the importance of Bitcoin, it is important that we have a smart way to buy and hold Bitcoin. My friends at Coinbits, the oldest Bitcoin-only exchange in the United States, have pioneered the concept of roundups, which converts your spare change into Bitcoin. Simply connect your credit or debit cards, and your usual purchases are rounded up to the nearest dollar, letting you stack sats on every purchase without even thinking about it. Coinbits also provides a terrific self-custody experience. Connect a hardware wallet for automatic withdrawals into cold storage to minimize your risk and stay sovereign over your Bitcoin. My favorite Coinbits feature is Coinbits Plus, which gives you the best exchange rate on Bitcoin. It even gives you real-time feedback on how well you are doing on your savings plan. With Coinbits Plus, power users can save more money to buy even more Bitcoin. All that, plus peer-to-peer cash and Bitcoin payments, target orders, price alerts, and more, means Coinbits can help you do almost anything you need to do with Bitcoin. So go to coinbits.app/breedlove to sign up today. Again, that is coinbits, BITS.app/breedlove. The farm at Okefenokee is a revolutionary new regenerative agricultural community. It features an 8,000 tree olive orchard, which they use to make their own olive oil, as well as a very large pecan orchard. All the animals on the farm are heritage animals, with some varieties over 100 years old and others thousands of years old. Fresh eggs are produced daily by the farm's chickens. Also, there are over 1,000 beehives that pollinate the over 200 heirloom fruits and vegetables and provide honey to all the residents. The farm makes its own molasses, unrefined sugar, herbs, and spices. The farm also features an herbal apothecary and a commercial kitchen. These are just a few reasons why the farm is the healthiest place on earth. To learn more about the healthiest place on earth, go to okefarm.com and use discount code BREEDLOVE for $21,000 off custom cabin pricing. Again, to learn more about the farm at Okefenokee, go to okefarm.com and be sure to tell them I sent you. I want to ask you this too. You said something else that was a bit strange to me, but I think it's interesting. You said good marketing simultaneously repels and attracts.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Now, I think most people think good marketing is just attractive, something you put on a billboard or a commercial or a YouTube video these days, and it makes people want to do business with you. What does that mean that it also repels?
Good marketing, you have to stand for something. If you stand if you're trying to appeal to everyone, you stand for nothing. No one knows how to identify with you.
Right.
Right. And so Republican, Democrat, if I'm like, hey, I'm pro-Trump, I am garnering attention, respect, love, admiration, inviting messages from people that align with those philosophies. And I'm also equally going to get probably half the amount of hate that say I'm a piece of shit, but I'm standing for something. And if I say that in a business sense, I'm probably going to get a lot of clients. And I actually did. I actually took a public stand, and I had some clients who were like, man, that was fucking brave. We live in a Democratic driven tech society, and you're coming out as a Republican. And a lot of people are like, dude, I fucking love you for that. I want to give you more business. And other people were like, you know, but at the same time, that's the thing with marketing is, you know, our headline for our company is the 96 Bulls of startup recruiting. Now, for people that like sports, that like competing, that like winning, that like the whole ethos of being a part of an elite championship team, they love it. For internal prospects that don't like that, they're like, that seems a little bit too intense for me, or like, I don't like sports, or I think this is juvenile, right? Some of the clients we want to attract, some of them love it. They're like, dude, I'm stealing this and using this we're the 96 Bulls of the SaaS industry, whatever it may be. A lot of them loved it, but some of them hated it. They're like, some of the older private equity guys were like, oh, this is just, you know, immature. It's just not really professional. Right. So I don't want to work with them. I want to work with cool, hip, competitive, intense people that want to win. And if it's a super buttoned up old private equity thing and they don't have that like fun, disruptive mindset that venture has, then we're not meant to work together. And I'm okay with it. I'm going to express my values openly, and that's going to repel the wrong clients. It's going to attract the right ones. It's going to repel the wrong employees. It's going to attract the right ones. But I'm going to be bold. I'm going to be polarizing, and I'm going to be authentic. And so if you do that, same thing. Like, think about how you create a dating app profile, right? Like, what you put on that profile is going to repel and attract, right? Let's just say all of your pictures are you on private jets and yachts, and you're surrounded by tons of hot chicks. Well, who are you going to attract? You're probably going to attract a lot of gold diggers. You're going to attract a lot of women who get jealous and actually want a guy who's around a lot of other girls. Probably a lot of toxic behavior, right? Materialist. Versus if I put myself with my family, pictures of me meditating or playing sports with my friends, but there's no status symbols. Well, I'm probably going to attract family-oriented women, more down to earth, and those women that want that ultra luxe lifestyle probably won't click my profile.
Got it. Okay, so you're being very intentional about the customers you want to attract in your marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. And marketing, by the way, can just be your own speech.
Yeah.
Like whatever you're saying that's coming out of your mouth, no matter what, you're always attracting and repelling. The question is, are you being truly truthful?
Right.
Or are you cloaking something to avoid, you know, upsetting someone? You're trying to be liked by everybody.
Right.
And those people are forgotten in history.
So it's in marketing, you're trying to remove all the political correctness, basically. Because the political correctness is when you do try to, like, you know, don't say the wrong thing or don't make anyone mad, like put something out that's sort of vanilla.
A great example is this company, ENDORSE, right? Okay. Defense tech company, sells to the US government. They had a big campaign for their hiring called Don't Work at ENDORSE. And everyone changed their LinkedIn banners and their pictures, and everyone's profiles are updated, Don't Work at ENDORSE. And everyone's like, okay, why would a company say don't work for us? Which sparked curiosity. And you look into it, they're saying, hey, working at ENDORSE is really hard. You're going to be working nonstop. It's going to test you in every way, but it's in service of this mission. So boom, right there, people are like, wow, they're very clear. They're going to work you to the bone. And this is good. This has to be your life's work, or you can't be here. Right. They're taking a definitive stance. They created a catchy thing to get your attention, to get you to look at it. But now it's easy for people to self-select in and self-select out.
The polarization thing does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I do a video for every internal prospect recruit, and they see me and I pitch the company. I pitch who we are. I tell them exactly how hard it is to work here, the opportunities. I try to scare people away. And some people reply and say, yeah, not for me. And some say, fuck, this is the best message I've ever got. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone that deeply resonates with my values.
Okay. That's so interesting. All right. Let's flip back to spirituality, if we could, for the last few minutes here. You've talked about there being 3 paths to enlightenment. suffering, service, and sacrifice. I guess first I would like to know, what does enlightenment mean to you? And then what are those three paths?
Great question. I think for me, enlightenment as a whole it has a mathematical frequency, right? If you look at the vibration, 700 to 1,000 hertz. But enlightenment for me means you're just in a state of bliss, in a state of wholeness. You don't want anything because you have everything. You're completely whole, and all you want to do is just give love to the world. Your heart is full and it's overflowing, and you're in a state of bliss, love, ecstasy. And all there is to do there is to give, to share, and to bask in that ecstasy with other people.
And that seems very difficult to sustain, to be sustainable. Like I feel like I've had those moments in life, but I like to just be there all the time.
I don't think you can be there all the time. I think it's a journey to be there. And I think if you just take that down a notch, I think enlightenment more or less is freedom from being imprisoned by your lower frequency emotions.
Okay.
It's the ability to control your state more or less, to where as often as possible, you're in a state of peace, of calmness, of gratitude. You're living your life in beautiful states versus negative states. And you're conscious of your energy, and you're just hyper conscious of what's going on around you, and you're not quick to give it your power. And so when I think about that, most people are not awake. They're not awake to their power, that they themselves are the creator of their own lives. They're not awake to their ability to influence outcomes in their life. And they're not aware that they can actually control their emotions, and therefore control the point of vibration which they attract everything in their life to. And when I think about how do you get there? How do you awaken to your power? How do you awaken spiritually to where you can transcend this ego? You can transcend your fears, your limits. How do you get there? Like, what are the paths? Give me a practical formula or a blueprint. How do I awaken spiritually? Right now, I think there's a multitude of ways, but the three that really come to mind for me is first, it's sacrifice, right? If you look at a lot of these prophets in biblical texts and stuff, they're getting all these answers and wisdom from God, and they're in a fasted state. They're restraining themselves from their human desires to access their divine power. So by restraint, by sacrifice, by giving something of a lower nature up for something of a higher nature, that is a portal to God. That is a portal to your power. So if I can discipline myself, try this, count your macros for 30 days and adhere to a perfectly disciplined diet without breaking your intention. That is a spiritual journey. You have to come up against all your devices, all your desires, your compulsions, and you have to master yourself. And in mastering yourself and overcoming your desire and depriving yourself of that dopamine and all those animalistic desires, you tap into your divine potential. So sacrifice is a big one. Now service is the other. When you are serving somebody, you disappear. You are giving love to transform another human life. And giving is receiving. So to give that love to somebody else is to receive it for yourself. They're directly correlated. So if you want to access your divine truth, which is that we are all love, all this is just love. It's the base frequency of the universe, and everything besides love is just separation from it. When you realize that, serving becomes this remarkable portal to access the love in our heart, because we're just giving from that place, right? So building the nonprofits and building schools in other countries where it was just not about me. It was about the team that I put together and us being successful and actually creating a real impact for people's lives. Or it's my clients, and that's like me not looking at the revenue. It's me in my heart focusing all my energy on making that founder's dream come true. When I'm serving, even if it's just someone nice, I'm buying their coffee and I say, hey, have a beautiful day. All different scales. That is me giving love and getting closer to God, because anything that brings you more into love brings you closer to God and brings you closer to your power.
What about suffering?
Suffering is a big one.
Yeah.
So I think there's two different ways you can look at this.
This is a great one. Right? We all saw life is suffering, the whole Buddhist dictum. I mean,
absolutely. And look, there's unintentional suffering that happens to us. We have someone we love that dies. We get our heart broken. And there's some big traumatic event that causes us to introspect and to look within. And it causes us to actually do some inner work, do some shadow work, to learn how to love ourselves more. And again, all this, we're coming back to love, right? Discipline is the same thing. Do you love yourself enough to say no to that cake, to say yes to your health, right? All these tie back into love and truth, but suffering. If like, there's things that happen to us that cause us to introspect. And so in those moments when we're broken down to the bottom, one of my friends, very famous celebrity agent, 20 years addicted to all these types of pills. One day he just hit rock bottom, threw his pills away, changed his whole life forever. He's been 15 years sober. It was that moment where he had enough, but he suffered for 20 years, eventually gave his life to God, but that was his moment. I said, I surrender, I release, I'm letting you in control now. I don't know how to do this. Let me take your guidance. And his life's been magical ever since. And then there's intentional suffering, which is you putting yourself in certain situations. That's why I think what David Goggins does is a spiritual process. He's breaking down his body so deeply that he can access his true self. He's destroying his animal cravings for comfort and safety. And in doing so, he's accessing his divine's unlimited self, right? And so can you put yourself in situations, whether it's as small as a cold plunge, a hard workout, going and building a hard business, doing something really difficult that challenges you, and that might be associated with not eating ice cream, whatever it may be. Can you restrain? Can you suffer intentionally, temporarily, to overcome the animal mind? Meditation, another example of this. Sitting down for hours where you're just coming up against your own mind for hours, and all you want to do is have some coffee and check your emails, scroll through Instagram. You discipline your body. You say, no, you're going to sit here. I don't care if you have to suffer. I'm in control, and your spirit then takes over, and you get access to infinite amounts of wisdom and power. And so it's really, can you restrain yourselves from what makes you human to then allow your divine to emerge? And that's where you just tap into wisdom and power that you would have never believed existed.
Yeah. I love what is that saying, that you either suffer the pain of discipline or regret, something like that. And there's something, it's all, even this idea of deferring consumption, let's say, that is so essential to capitalism. Like that is a spiritual thing too, right? You're really constraining your animal instincts, sacrificing the lower good to the higher good, as you said. And that is not just woo-woo talk, right? There's very pragmatic economic consequences to that. And that's why we've been able to create this life of economic abundance we have over thousands and thousands of generations.
Yes.
And that, it's so interesting how that same principle applies to multiple domains.
Everything. And then I was talking with one of my coaches about this, and he goes, I'd like to add a fourth one in there. And he just said courage. Again, that could be potentially put underneath sacrifice. Like you have to sacrifice your comfort for courage, right? You have to sacrifice looking good and all that to put yourself out there. But I think ultimately when you overcome yourself, that is the access to your power. If you look at all these, whether it's sacrifice, suffering, or service, and each of these, you're overcoming yourself.
Right. Living life beyond yourself.
Yeah. And when you get out of yourself, when you get beyond yourself and you're living for others, or you're able to sacrifice your own desires and needs for a higher good, that is your power. Because dude, if you have an ego and you're just living for yourself, you don't need God.
Yeah.
You don't need all of his energy. You don't need all of his insights. You don't need all that power, right? Your vision's for you. You can conduct your dreams off the limited battery of the human body.
Yeah.
You don't need the divine force. You don't need the electricity of the universe to run through your veins to propel you to do something, because your vision is too small. Now, if you have a vision to change millions of lives, your human battery is not going to be sufficient.
Yeah.
And so when you surrender to God, you live for something greater than yourself. You make sacrifices, and you are willing to suffer and go up against yourself in the name of that vision. God will fill you with energy. I always wonder, how does Tony Robbins, how does Joe Dispenza, how do they do, 16, 18 hour days, get 2-3 hours of sleep for a week plus at a time? Yeah. Tony, for instance, builds up enough, what is when you run and it builds up in your body? Lactic acid. Yeah. Tony Robbins builds up enough lactic acid per day to kill a regular human. To kill. They're like, how are you not dead?
Good thing he's a Neanderthal.
Exactly. And, and Joe Dispenza, I've personally seen him and been around him. The guy's doing 16, 17 hour days and we're having dinner after, and he's just perfectly present, healthy, never misses a word, doesn't stumble on a single word. Everything is perfect. And I'm like, this man was given a mission, an order by God, and he is a vessel for that work, and God gives him infinite energy to achieve it. And that is not possible when you're living for yourself. Think about mothers, fathers, think about what they'll do. These women working, single moms working 3 jobs and raising 3-4 kids. Yeah. That is superhuman energy. Like that, if I tried to do that, I would just break down and die. Yeah. Right. But these women are able to do that because they have such a big reason for living. And so they're tapping into that love energy from God, and it gives you superhuman abilities. And so if you're only living in your mind, limited by a small vision that's only about you and your indulgences, you will never remotely come close to knowing what you're capable of.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. It's well said. It reminds me of Nietzsche's, he who has a why can bear any how.
Yes.
And there's a lot of truth to that.
Yes.
So, one last question to close this out, because I want to, this is something else that I think about. I hear what you're saying. Like there's this principle of sacrifice, like encoded into the fabric of reality. And we've discovered it over time, and you can apply it to all these different domains, like capitalism or learning or living life beyond yourself, becoming, transcending yourself, right? Growing into someone that really just starts in your imagination, but that you can actually grow into.
Yeah.
That's all well and good and real, but man, there are demagogues and rhetoricians out there that take advantage of that same language, right? And try to get people to sacrifice their life, liberty, or property to the greater good. I'm looking at all the politicians that have ever existed across history, basically. How do we wrestle with that? Because like the language, as we're saying, there's truth to it, but it can also be used instrumentally to like manipulate people. And so if we go back to all of us being programmable and wanting hopefully to program ourselves and not be programmed by others, how can people inoculate themselves against those language games?
I think first you have to be aware. And this is what you do really well. You don't just say, okay, how do I get rich? How do I build wealth? You're like, how do I understand first principles of what money is? Yeah. And all the systems around it. Right. And that's the rabbit hole you dove down, is like, how do I gain a macro understanding of how this whole thing works? So first, hopefully you have to have that curiosity and access to that knowledge of understanding how these things work. Right. So I was in the seminar business initially, and I was just observing how these guys were closing from stage. And I started, someone told me, hey, they're using NLP on you. I was like, oh, is that why I'm buying all these courses?
Oh, neuro-linguistic
programming. Yeah. And I'm like, what's NLP? And I started studying it. And then I just started seeing all the actual psychological tactics they were using. Every time they wanted to go make a pitch and close me on a new program, they would tell a really emotional story right before. Get you out of your prefrontal cortex, out of your reasoning brain, into your emotional brain, so you make an emotion-based decision.
Or you're more impressionable, probably.
Way more impressionable, because now you're no longer in your frontal cortex, your brain waves change. And then once they're in that state, they'll start using suggestions like, by now you probably understand how this could change your life. And by now you're probably seeing that you have so much more potential than you ever thought. By now, and they're programming the command "by now" into your mind.
Oh, wow. That's simple, huh?
That's simple.
Wow.
And there's hundreds of other small things. The way the chairs are set up, the spacing between the chairs, how you walk to the audience and put your shoulder on one guy and anchor that one individual, so that if you change that one individual, you connect that emotion to the whole room. Wow. There's an amazing amount of mental Jedi tricks. And, Robert Greene has the book, The 48 Laws of Power, that talks about the dark side of psychology, really, right? And I think if you want to equip yourself to not fall prey to the world, the best thing you can do is just educate yourself to understand how it works. Yeah. Right. There's a lot of people that are still advocating for the jab out there, and that are totally indoctrinated by all the woke bullshit, because they never thought to question, and they just believe anything that comes from media, especially their politicians and their side of the media, is accurate. And so first off, I think you just have to start questioning things. You have to have the agency. And again, not everyone will do this. And this is how the world is wired. For every hyper genius person, there's someone who has zero critical thought about their life, right? It's the law of polarity. Both have to exist. But hopefully You get access to great podcasts and teachers, and you start to wake up and ask questions. And that's all we could ever ask, right? We would never try to say, you must think like us.
For sure.
But we want to spark the questions to get people thinking for themselves, to do their own investigations, to then arrive at their own conclusions. But we're advocating for sovereignty. We're advocating for people to do the critical thinking, do the investigations, and then become aware of the forces around them. Realize that a lot of them aren't actually working in their favor. Your politicians don't want you to be successful. Your government doesn't want you to be rich. And your own mind doesn't even want you to be successful. It wants you to be safe. So you're working against your own mind, because your mind is even built for survival, not for success. Right. So if you look at all these forces working against you and you become aware of that, you can begin to devise a plan for how you want to interact with the world. And you gain your agency back. But it starts with awareness. It starts with investigating, surrounding yourself with other high agency, sovereign thinkers, because collectively you're dangerous to the world. And be a rebel and question things and come to your own conclusions. And again, like you do, is always seek your own truth. And if you live your life that way, I think it'll take you where you need to go.
It's beautiful. It's a great place to put a button on it, I think. Chris, dude, thank you for doing this. I knew it was going to be high energy, motivating, insightful, and did not disappoint at all. Where can people find you on the internet? Instagram
at Chris Vasquez, Twitter, I'm Chris Vasquez. LinkedIn, if anyone here even uses that. Doubt the crypto guys are on that, but Chris Vasquez. And then I got a podcast on YouTube called World Class.
And it's fucking great, by the way. Like, I was listening to some episodes preparing for this, and you ask really good questions. You have great guests. So yeah, I encourage people to check that out. Dude, thank you.
Thank you, brother.
We'll
great
do it again since we're neighbors.
Let's go. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money. And be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.